Welcome everyone to the Advisor Design Panel meeting for Thursday, September 12th. Hope you all had a wonderful summer. I guess we'll start with acknowledging that this meeting is being held on the Squamish Nation traditional territory. And our first item is adoption of this agenda. Can I have someone move that?
Who moved it, sorry?
Okay. All in favor? Adopted. Thank you. The minutes from May 16th, 2019. Any comments from anyone on that?
Just I wasn't noted as absent.
Either was I. Okay. These two items will be noted. Everything else okay on those minutes? I guess we will have someone move for that. And second. All in favor? Adopted. Thank you. And the first project up is 38648 Buckley Avenue, which is an affordable housing development. And I'll hand over to Elaine Naisby, our planner.
Thank you. I don't know if Gary Buxton might want to speak first, briefly.
I'm Gary Buxton. I don't think I've actually been in front of the panel before. I'm a general manager here at the district, and up until probably half a year ago, this was sort of a project that I was leading on behalf of the district. It's certainly a district-sponsored project. It is in partnership with Cedar Sky Community Services. As a result of getting a grant, an approved grant with BC Housing, we are a fair way into the project design now, based on the approvals that we've got to date with BC Housing. Just recently, probably in the last 6 months, we brought CHPA on board to get into the detailed design. But it's certainly something that the district retains a significant interest in. We will continue to own the land. We're in the process of executing a lease with Cedar Sky to lease the property and then to operate the building through its life cycle. Well, the operating agreement will be with BC Housing, so it's a tripartite program and tripartite project between BC Housing, the district, and Cedar Sky Community Services. So it's something we hold near and dear to our hearts, and hopefully my colleagues here will help you through the details of the project this afternoon and give you a description of what it's about. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jerry. My name is Elaine Naisby. I'm a community planner with the District of Squamish. I'll give a very brief introduction and then I'll pass it over to the architects and landscape architect. So yeah, this is as Gary mentioned, district-initiated project. The goal to create affordable housing in proximity to downtown. This was recently rezoned to a comprehensive development zone. And so in terms of the sort of staff comments or feedback on our review, which is ongoing, I would like to highlight 2 items. One is the entry to the building. Staff wonders if it might be further accentuated, the primary residential entry. The other comment relates to the parking stalls. So the application is meeting the required number of parking stalls in the comprehensive development zone. Staff sees that there might be an opportunity for additional space for the youth center in proximity to the youth center if some of those stalls can be removed. That process requires staff and council review and approval. And staff has been in consultation with Cedar Sky Community Services, who do see merit in looking at this, and additional programming elements would be determined in consultation with Cedar Sky and youth. They might be additional plaza outdoor seating space outside of the youth center, possible space for a skateboard ramp, which is already in the design, potential move of the basketball hoop, or additional vegetation. So the staff comment is that staff would work with Cedar Sky on determining what those elements would be, and the process would be determined through staff and council review. So we have here Justin Dick and Leon Schroeder from CHPA Architects to present. We are asking ADP for feedback on the Development Permit Area 3 Form and Character Guidelines. So with that, we look forward to the discussion, and I'll pass it over. Thanks.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm Justin Dick with CHP Architects. We're very pleased to be up here and I'll go through the project briefly and happy to answer any questions and hear suggestions. As mentioned, Leon, Scott is our landscape architect just over here. So I'll go through the overall site plan and such. Scott will get into the depth of the landscape once I've finished my portion. So to start, I guess before I get into it, it's a 5-story, 76-unit affordable housing project. It's got a variety of units ranging from studios to 2 beds. And as noted, it's in partnership with the new youth center. So what you see on the screen there is our site. So Buckley Avenue running north-south to the west side of the site there. The property line, it's quite a odd-shaped, heart-shaped looking property line that we've had to work with. The larger constraints, as you can see, we're kind of surrounded by Britannia Slough to the north, Wilson Slough to the south, and it's a little faint here, but kind of these darker hatched areas, that's all our riparian setbacks. So way back when we were originally tasked a year and a half ago with Kerry to evaluate a few sites, this was the successful one. Based on it, did have a sliver of usable area throughout the middle of the site that we could work with. You'll see that our plan has followed that. To the northwest, there's some existing multifamily townhouses. There's the existing Discovery Trail to the north and east, and it kind of runs along the slough here. So you'll see we're trying to make some connections to that. There's an existing pump track in the center region here. Existing youth center, it used to be, for anyone familiar, it used to be the old RCMP building that's now being used as a youth center. This new project would, I think, take the place of that youth center, but the existing skate park would remain. Further to the east, there's a little bridge within the riparian area that makes a connection to existing high school in the southeast here. So just a bit of context. Overall, that's our development with the satellite image over it, so heavily forested on the north here. The site is, for anyone that's has been up there, it's heavily forested with mature trees that are quite tall, so we are in a very kind of forested and shaded area. The green area here, that's a portion of the site that we've been working with the district to kind of hatch off as a future park area. So that's kind of concurrent to this project, but it's a project done by the district, so they'll have some potential play and amenity activities there. Just good to note because it is providing some amenity to both the townhouses and our project going forward. Okay, so I think just first thing I want to point out with this one, because it'll come up when we talk about the parking. Even though our property lines kind of go down to here and the skate park's there, you'll notice the riparian area is encroaching on the existing skate park, and it's encroaching kind of on our area here. So with the discussion that Elaine was talking about, our parking stops there mainly because we're cut off by the riparian, but in reality there is additional asphalt parking here. What we're hoping to achieve, as she mentioned, is this line of parking here. If that just followed a straight line there, we would be 4 stalls short, which would allow us to provide more outdoor area there. So that's something we're exploring, but at this time this is what we're working with here. And then the idea is that the additional 4 spots would go over here, but that's a discussion on whether it can go in the riparian area or not. So access to our site is off the existing roadway here that was built in the townhouse phase. We're doing some frontage improvements, sidewalks and such to that area. Kind of pedestrian access. You can see we've got a path, a proposed path here that aligns with where there's a current kind of path cut into there. In recent discussion, there's some revisions to what we're showing here. Instead of that being the 3 meter, this is a 3 meter multi-use path. We've currently got it going to the north here to connect with the Discovery Trail. We're still going to have that, but that path is going to be smaller, and the 3 meter multi-use path is going to extend this way along here. So we're showing a path that's just going to get wider, and that'll be the primary multi-use path that connects with the Discovery Trail. Just some minor tweaks as we're going through the details with the district. I'm just going to zoom in a bit here. Okay, so the main entry to the building and to the 76 units is kind of to the left area here. So we have a dedicated pedestrian connection off that path, providing access there. And then we have another pedestrian access path crossing the parking to provide access to the youth center, which is on the ground level of this area here. This little plaza area, we've got overhead doors and such into the youth center so they can use outdoor activity space. There's a basketball hoop there, worked in some community gardens and such in consultation with Sea to Sky Services and what their youth want to see there. Half of this building is underground parking, which is on this region here, so you can see the vehicular access to the underground parking. Garbage is in a fully enclosed enclosure. That's the designs in the package I'll show you, but it's got a roof and kind of full wood finish to it, and fully contained there with the electrical PMT transformer beside it. Some of the other constraints, we are within the floodplain, so all our residential suites have to be lifted well above the floodplain area. We are currently working through an exemption for the youth center on the ground level and going through all the requirements to do that in a safe manner, but that does kind of tie into the reason on why our building is elevated. It actually created quite an opportunity where the youth center could fit into a space for an economic placement under BC Housing funding, since the whole building has to be raised in the air regardless for floodplain. Just sliding further to the kind of southeast here, that's the existing skate park, so we're not touching that, but we are trying to make some enhancements and connections to it. The youth center's here, so we're providing a walkway to connect, because it's probably primarily the youth center that's using the skate park in most cases. Is that in there?
I think that's it, yeah.
All right. Okay, so these are our site sections on how we relate to the neighboring properties. These are the relatively new townhouses on the side here. So just kind of adjacent height and scale to them. We're a fair distance from them. There's vegetation and a pathway in between. We have no decks or balconies on that side of the building, you know, paying respect to not having on-looking onto the adjacent neighbors. I think the other ones, it's a fairly flat site for the most part. It dips down to the sloughs on the north and the south, but otherwise generally flat, some localized, smaller up and down terrain. On the bottom of the page here, this is the garbage enclosure, so we're mimicking the similar materials as we're doing on the building. This is the ground floor of the building. So as noted on the left-hand side here, this is parking. We are right on our parking counts. We've got ample bike storage as indicated in purple here, and then the main entry to the 76 units is through here. The entry to, this got swapped around a little bit. The entry to the medical clinic portion of the youth hub is right here. That also serves as somewhat of an entry to the youth hub, but I think the youth would probably more use the east entry here because it relates directly to the skateboard park and such. Zooming into the youth hub a little bit more, some of the amenities. I mean, they've got multi-purpose areas, a media room. They've got a kitchen. They'll be doing, teaching the life skills and making meals and such. We've got an overhead door from the youth center, flex area to open up and provide indoor, outdoor activities to the outside here. Scott will get into more detail of the landscape, but generally we've been asked to provide a basketball hoop, some gardens along the north here, and just outdoor kind of hangout activity areas for the youth. This is a typical floor plan for all the floors 2 through 5. And again, it's just a mix of studio 1 beds and 2 beds. As typical, we try to get the larger units on the corners so that 2 beds have that additional glazing to the corners. Those are the unit plans. I don't know if there'll be questions, but I have them there for reference if anyone wants to look at them. Roof plan, it's a flat roof, and we're just doing pop-ups at each of the unit areas as you see in the elevations. Any mechanical equipment would go on the middle portion there over the corridors, which on a 5-story kind of viewpoint in a very dense forested area I don't think you'd ever see, but if you do, we would look at screening it. These are the exterior elevations. So this elevation is the front elevation, as you see. Mix of materials. We've got blue material here is a hardy shingle shake type of material. The white colored here is a lap siding, and then the brownish looking colored material there is aluminum longboard faux wood style. On the ground, we have it's a cast in place parkade. We need to be budget conscious, so we've spent a little bit of money with the materials to have a charcoal masonry brick on the front that has elements that go up to the second story. All the main kind of pedestrian areas and entryways are all brick, as you can see here, to accent with a tactile sort of feeling material as you go into the building. We got a canopy along the front that covers all the entryways and wraps around the building. And as Elaine mentioned, we've already chatted with her and have some thoughts and ideas on how to make the main entry to the 76 units a little more prominent so it stands out from the other entries. Kind of forming character, where we see a lot of the buildings around Squamish here, the kind of natural terrain and such. We've got heavy blue laminated timbers, used sparingly again for cost, but to add to that kind of wood and rock and outdoor character. And again, being adjacent to some quite nice contemporary looking townhouses, we're trying to mimic some of the materials that they're doing to blend within the neighborhood. So this is the west elevation that faces the townhouses. Again, you get the corners of some balconies, but otherwise it's all windows. I'll mention the parkade. It's a naturally vented parkade for kind of cost efficiency and such. So these are metal grates to allow natural ventilation through there rather than having to do it with big fans and motors and such. The next one, that's the east, oh sorry. No, the southeastish elevation. So as you can see, that's our overhead door for the youth center that opens onto that plaza. That's probably the more main entry for the youth to use. And then this is the elevation that faces the trail and the forest and the slough and such. So again, we're concrete on the base here. Didn't feel the need on this elevation to spend the money on the brick because it is quite a densely forested area. And then similar materials as you see that are wrapped around the side.
And for the brick coloring on the first floor, and some of the PDFs and white paper copies that kind of unfortunately came out with a bluish tinge. You may have noticed that, and that's not the actual color. It's more of a charcoal brown, and we do have a material and color board coming up that will show a bit more clearly.
So this is what you see when you walk in, or when you drive into the site. That's the access to the underground parking, and yeah, and that's the entryway that we've mentioned. We'll emphasize a little bit more. This is the view from the other corner. So this is the youth center down here, and the overhead doors and such, and the parking in front. I've got these. We just added these today as reference, just some bird's eye views of how this kind of fits on the site there, but I can jump back to them if there's more detailed questions looking in there. And my apologies to dear Elaine, who reminded me I forgot the material board in my car this morning, but this is the material board. We've got the cobblestone, so the whiter material that you see on there, the cobblestone, hardy lap siding. The shingles are the Benjamin or Van Dusen blue color. The hardy siding, so that's the wood tone that you see there, and then the brick up here is it's a charcoal style brick. All the windows and railings, window frames and such would be either like a charcoal black or gray color, and the concrete would be painted a gray color. The landscape now. Scott, you want to just give us a quick brief overview on the landscape?
Thank you. The project, as you can see, interfaces with the Britannia Slough Discovery Trail on the northeast, Wilson Slough and Parkland to the southeast or southwest, and then the youth portion is to the southeast. And what we were trying to do is make connectivity to all three, and this way your residents will be fully engaged with the youth there, hopefully, and the youth right back. The youth area we're looking at, as you can see right now with the parking stalls there, It's a tight, open space area. We have some seat walls that have been proposed, and if those parking areas were removed, it opens up for more of a theater seating area. Kids gather, you know, they could even have a movie night out there. There's lots of seating. We have some movable seating blocks that we can use along some of the walls as well. And then when you get into the landscape, the soft part, it's a mixture of deciduous and conifer trees, various different grasses and shrubs. Bringing the site alive is the way I would describe it. A lot of color, a lot of different texture, a lot of winter interest, things like that. So it's all about connecting. You know, we'll have the Discovery Trail connections on both sides. So people are going to be coming and moving around this a fair amount, and the more you welcome them, the more they accept it, the more they take ownership, and through that, that's what we are working on achieving.
Thank you. I'll just finish with one item. One overlook in the staff report. So the list of recommendations that staff provided was our typical 4 options for council. Staff has been reviewing this application in a timely fashion to meet the community's critical housing need, and this is what's called a priority project. So we have a priority application processing policy, and part of that policy is that the projects come to ADP once. So we would really appreciate all the comments, and then staff will work with the applicant to ensure that they're addressed. Thank you.
Okay, so we don't go through the options, in other words, as we usually would.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, well, thanks very much, and we'll start as we usually do with a round of questions. Jenna, would you be ready to start on your side?
Yeah, sounds good. With the entries to the youth center and the residential, you were speaking about finding ways to make them pop. What were some of your ideas top of mind for those changes?
Right now, the main one is right now it's one roof line that wraps around
Yeah.
all in an effective way to keep them all out of the rain. I think we want to pop up the roof level of the main entry one a little more to make it stand out. So on first inclination, it might be just popping the roof up and then tilting it forward just to give it a little more prominence. There's windows above, so you know, pitching it or doing too high would start interrupting with the windows, but we can, maybe on those ones, we'll take the windows and crunch them a little bit just to get a little more height in that area.
Yeah, and right now it's the painted concrete in that area?
It's brick in that
It's
area.
brick,
Yeah.
and the youth is painted concrete, or is it brick?
Everything that you see from the parking area that wraps around the corner is brick.
So would there be potential consideration for a different color as a potential option to help it pop, or?
We could. Because I know we do want to make that a bigger entry. That being said, there are there's 3 other entries around the building as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with 76 residents, we probably do want to pop that up. So yeah, color something.
Yeah. And then with regards to the landscape with the parking area that would potentially be transformed into an open space, from a grading perspective, I imagine that parking area is relatively flush. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is. And then
then are those walls stepping down into the skate park, or is the skate park generally flush with
the skate park is a couple meters up, as you can see here.
It's up.
We haven't. This one doesn't
I thought it
have
was
fully
down.
modeled in. Yeah, no, the entire thing, it's got a bunch of boulders, so it's built up 2 meters, so you have to go up and then
Okay.
drop into the bowl. So yeah, it's not modeled in here correct on this image, but we're having to ramp up to get there, which is a little bit challenging for accessibility and whatnot, but it is. I think we are making it all work at this point.
Oh, that's a lot to me. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you very much for creating a aesthetic pleasing public housing project. It's very beautiful, so thank you. And from a public art perspective, creating pride of place, what would you consider or are considering in terms of connecting the skate park through the plaza area and even using green, natural, organic as to create public art in all of the spaces?
Well, the connecting to the skate park, of course, is the difficult part. And, you know, with the parking area, if it's opened up for youth plaza or something, we could do a number of different things. There hasn't been a lot of discussion at this moment, but it would definitely, yeah, be something that we could look for. We could add learning elements, you know, which some of them will be public art, right? You know, there's a number of different ways.
There's probably a great connection with the youth too. I would assume for they'll probably fit it out with, you know, basketball hoops. Yeah, basketball hoops. But I'm sure there's other kind of art aspects that the youth would provide as they fit this out. So maybe we design it, you know, work it in such a way that it allows for placement of those. A lot's going to come down to, like, it's kind of a new, as of last week, thought to get rid of this parking lot and replace it with that. So, so yeah, there's a lot we can do there.
So would you consider working with various youth organizations to create that pride of place through public art?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I would think of using Sea to Sky's resources
Yeah.
because they're the direct connection to the youth. So I bet you there's a great opportunity to tie in some of the cultural art or other pieces like that.
Yeah, and the public art committee is working with the high school as well and several schools to create public art through these areas. So that would be a good connection.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Can you just explain the parking again to me? I got a little lost on the, we would be losing the stalls at the top of that image adjacent to the skate park, but then what happens on the, beside the skate park? Like there's already stalls that are there, but they'll be removed. Maybe this is a planning question.
So this is a tough one with, it's hard to see on the screen here. Just go to the site plan.
It's,
Yeah, this one shows it. So basically, this is the, and we looked at this early on, we really didn't want to do this little double-loaded parking bit here. We got pushed to because there's not another square inch for parking. We really tried to just, this line of parking, just to kind of continue that line down this way. So it's really just one straight double-loaded end of parking. So we were able to do that because over here, the asphalt actually cuts over here and over there. So there's actually more parking on the asphalt, existing asphalt going this way. But because we're playing by all the rules and we've got the riparian setback, and technically there'd be a riparian fence that cuts all that off, we don't have that parking anymore, which pushed us to design this little double-loaded bit.
okay.
So now at this stage, we're working to hope there's either A, maybe an environmental setback kind of trade-off deal we can make, or B, a variance within the city or something to that effect. So this entire parking could get redesigned as a plaza, and then we have those, the 4-stall shortfall could go in that area, or if it's a variance, we just don't provide the 4 stalls and we.
Okay, so for clarity, this meets the parking requirement
So
as is. If you get rid of the 12 stalls at the top there, you would add them in where the fire truck turnaround is?
That's right. So from
Yeah, okay,
this,
so
yeah,
then
from here to
what's the number that you would be short without 4?
4.
Okay, yeah.
4 or 5.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was all for my questions. Yeah, thanks.
So I guess my question's around kind of the exact same thing. When you're saying there's already pavement there and then you would need a riparian fence, does the pavement remain? And then like, how does that work?
That's a good question.
in most cases, when we do riparian work, either a black chain link fence or a split rail gets placed, and any pavement gets torn up and replanted as natural. That's what we're typically used to. But in this case, it's one that we don't know the answer yet until we kind of work to that level of detail. But in most cases, that's what we've been faced with. Here, we're hoping maybe with the city, we just quietly leave it as asphalt, because think, it's even better to have more parking for the skateboard park and such too, right?
Been there a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, and it's been there a long time, it's not like we're interrupting a riparian, it's an existing, so that's kind of the piece that we're playing with right now.
Have you guys, or has anyone looked into how many people actually drive to the skate park right now? Like I know I've been there a number of times and I've seen a fair number of vehicles there to actually use the skate park rather than biking or skateboarding there. Like has that sort of the amount of parking for the skate park alone been sort of factored into how we've set up the parking for the building itself?
We don't have a parking study or parking counts, so no, at this point we're providing the bylaw standard for the building and whatever the main parking would be for the skate park.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, like we design a lot of affordable housing. I won't speak to kind of a particular bylaw here, but I've seen buildings like this being affordable, getting away with a lot less parking, but that's more for city bylaw and how they want to deal with that. So I would hope that there'd be enough ample parking to include for the skateboard with our stalls that we're showing, but yeah.
Thanks.
So I guess following from that question, were there explorations where you went for a 6-story building, just with was the parking the de facto limiter of units?
No, I think the current bylaw maxes out. We're like 0.3 of a meter under the maximum height for our 5-story building here. So we just didn't exceed. Yeah, and you're right. If we wanted to go higher, we could get a variance, but the parking kind of thing. So that was our.
Is there a step code level contemplated for the building?
It's going to be step 3.
Okay. And is there any concerns with the roll-up door associated with that, or would that be separate too, because it's considered commercial at that level?
Yeah, they separated out the commercial area. Yeah.
And then construction methodology. I think often you see affordable housing projects come in and they're modular, but looking at your unit configuration, it's actually pretty complex.
Yeah, we would. No, it's not being designed as a modular. We did some heavy research into both CLT and prefab. CLT wouldn't fit within our budget. It could still be prefab, but that's up to a contractor how they want to do it. So.
Okay.
Is the multi-use trail surfaced? Is it paved?
It's ash.
And you're saying that the grade change between the entrance to the youth center and the skate park is 2 meters?
Is it about 2 meters?
Yeah, and it's more from that parking lot area up that it rises. So there is approximately 2 meters.
Yeah, I think.
So is there a dip down to the parking lot from the youth center park?
Yeah, it's fairly flat from the building to
that wall.
To that wall, past the parking stalls. It's once the kind of the end of those current parking stalls that is a fairly significant rise.
Yeah, instead of them digging out to build everything, they built everything right up, so everything's flat and it's built up.
And you've got the pathways that are connecting to the skate park as asphalt paved as well. Are they currently? I don't think they're currently paved, are they? They go up through the parking lot, like by the old youth center.
I think there might be it's older asphalt, but I think they're asphalt.
Oh, okay, how do we still?
Pretty rough.
Pretty rough, yeah.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Great, thanks for the great package. Just trying to understand the circulation access to the site and also the siting of the building. Can you just explain a bit more about those riparian setbacks and how that led to you siting the building? It seems quite tight towards the back.
Yeah, we did a feasibility study, and as you can see, kind of this line here, that's our buildable area, and this line here. So really what dictated, and then we've got a zigzaggy kind of shaped property line, so it's all quite narrow. And the road enters there, so really the most kind of economical way is to carry the line of the road down with double loaded parking to get our parking. And that leaves, and we placed the building there to give a buffer and outdoor area between the building and the skate park. Other than that, we try to have so it worked out nice that we're somewhat self-oriented, I guess. But
So what is that in the back of the building? Is that a path or?
yeah, so our setbacks are here. We're right on the setback, it's quite tight. And then this path, we're showing it as 3 meters, it would get a little bit smaller, but it's still there. So it would be a path that connects around the back of the building here to the Discovery Trail.
Yeah, okay, so 3 meters for the path all around from Buckley and then also up to Discovery?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, yeah, okay. And then if you're going to the skate park, how do you get there? Because this is building over the existing gravel road, so you're driving through the parking lot and then...
Yeah, I mean, to get to the skate park, you're driving through the parking lot here. I don't know, do they still use that bridge on the other side, or are they not allowed to? That's just pedestrian, isn't it?
Yeah, there's,
Yeah, so the only vehicular access is through all this parking, and then there's a plethora of pedestrian accesses that are existing in Murray.
Right, so if you kept the parking as shown, you would park somewhere in there, or if you take it away, you would park in the existing parking lot next to the skate park.
Or the high school.
Yeah,
Right. Or the high school and walk through, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I mean, my anecdotal comment is I go there often with my kids and I've never seen more than 5 cars there, even when it's busy. So those are my comments, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for presentation.
Thanks.
I just wanted to, if you can help me with the site grade a little bit. I can't read actually the survey grade. It seems you mentioned that it's a flat site, but in A10 I can see some contour lines. What are those?
They're very small, I think they're increments of a foot or something. Yeah, they're not like meter contour lines.
I can't read them. And is it up or down or up? I assume it's down toward the Britannia side, right?
Let's see. So I got 2.2, 2.1, so they are 10. They're 10.
How much is the total height difference?
Okay. So 1.7 meters to 2.5. So from,
This is an existing kind of low-lying area, as you can see here. So
Is that in meter or feet?
they're in meters, and each line appears to be 10 centimeter increment.
10 centimeters.
Yeah.
So 4-inch increment.
Yeah.
Very deep.
Why
It's
is it
very detailed.
Yeah.
Spit it out.
They do that.
And how
Yeah.
much are you raising the building for the flood?
The suspended slab is pretty much at grade, because that's allowed to be within floodplain. So then the building itself is, what, 3 meters or so
Yes.
above localized grade.
So 3 meter raising to avoid the flood, right?
For the residents above, but the youth center and the parking is at grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 10 feet.
Yeah, the building itself.
The building itself is at grade. We're not putting it on a mound or anything like that. We're using the parkade to get us
Right.
up there. We did look at putting the whole thing on a mound, but grading to
Okay.
get up there would eat up our entire site, so.
Okay. And do you think there's any chance to make the entrance a bit more common, do you think?
Yeah.
I agree, yeah.
And you're using aluminum windows?
No, they would be vinyl.
It's mentioned here.
Oh, did we mention that?
Yeah.
Okay, could be aluminum clad then.
I think there's some aluminum on the first floor.
Yeah, the whole ground level is curtain wall or so.
Yeah.
First of all, of course, but the rest?
The residential
are
Residential.
vinyl?
are vinyl, yeah.
Okay, because it's pretty hard to get it to step 3.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Okay, that's...
Yeah, I guess I'm also kind of focused on at the site level. So the existing youth center, what's its future? Will it continue to operate, or does this building replace that?
it's in an aging building, so that will phase out when the youth center moves to this new space.
And is that that's on a different parcel of land,
It is,
even though the building falls over the property line right now? Okay.
yeah.
Is there the opportunity to make stronger connections south? It seems odd that you have to come all the way up and around and down through this residential component to get to the park, whereas a lot of the fees would come from the high school. Is it possible to build a better pedestrian connection, or?
There is an existing pedestrian connection. It's an old road that's over an old culvert, so
Okay.
it's not really suitable for vehicular access. It's also a crown parcel to the south, so it's not a district-owned parcel.
Okay.
So there certainly is a pedestrian access there, but not vehicular.
Okay.
And we are connecting right to the edge of our property line with that new 3 meter path. And this will be widened to 3 meters as well to connect to that area.
Okay.
Good. Michael
Yeah.
mentioned that existing bridge and roadway, it was a former road, so it's quite a wide pedestrian path, and
Yeah.
it's not a quite narrow.
Good, okay, well, I think that's a critical connection.
Yeah.
At the civil level, is there any stormwater management? It looks like the civil package just has everything very conventional back into the storm system. No infiltration in any of the landscape spaces or using the riparian.
Trying to remember, we got,
They were to the floodplain, because of the floodplain, you can't really do that because you'll just encourage the water buildup.
are we detaining? I don't have civil drawings with me. I know we are connected into, for storm, we're connecting into an existing outflow towards the creek here, which kind of helps charge the creek a little bit. And I can't recall if we have.
There is some for the detention.
There is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, or infiltration, or, I mean, just.
Large gravel field
Oh, okay.
parking where it collects and then drains out, and the overflow is connecting to the
creek.
outfall to Britannia.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, so we do have a bit then for infiltration.
Okay.
Yeah.
What determines the covered space to the south, which I think the youth center is in a great spot on that building. Just wondering if there's any benefit of getting a bigger covered space on
Yeah.
perfect days like today.
Exactly, we were thinking already extending it a bit further around the corner as well, extending that canopy, not further away from the building, although that's an option too, but further along that building face.
Okay.
So the full extent of that south side of the building is basically fully covered all the way along,
Like extending this.
right to the end there.
Oh, so extending it to the length there, yeah.
Correct, yeah.
And I mean, it is a very small area at the moment, hopefully it gets bigger, but I think the intent was to have enough to like have a covered barbecue area and enough kind of seating under the coverage, but then still maintain some nice daylit areas.
Okay. And what's the treatment on the glue lambs? Because that's a lot of exposed glue lamb, and you know, we continue to see that flaking in sun exposure and weather exposure. So what are you thinking there?
We have got a secret formula that we have been using on exterior glue lamps. I personally don't.
Is that tongue in cheek, or is that?
No, we've got a 6-coat.
Okay.
You know, some of that, like because we do a lot of schools and everyone wood first, they all want timber on the outside. So there's no warranted system for glue lamp from MPI or anything like that. So we've worked with experts to do the absolute best we can. But you're right, wood is a natural material, and no matter how many coats you put on there, down the road there probably would be some.
Do you ever consider another material than glue lamp? Something that we're recognizing that this is a social project, and maintenance is a liability.
Yeah, I mean, we used it sparingly. We could clad columns, I guess, if we want the wood look. We could also lose the columns, I suppose, and I don't think I'd go with steel or anything like that. Probably wouldn't fit, but
the columns aren't necessary structurally.
They hold up the decks, but they could just be a painted type column. I guess the other now that we could do a glue lamp with like a very translucent stain. I think it's almost towards paint. You still get the look and feel of the big solid members, but that's pretty. I think you'd almost get a warranty and MPI approval on the darker stains. So you get less of the wood look, but you still get the heavy timber aspect to it.
And the last question, the pop-ups are just that they don't reflect any volume inside the building.
No, we've done a couple for BC Housing where you have both your living spaces, but they've kicked that out there flat.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thanks very much. All of my questions have been addressed, so we can move straight to comments.
Sure.
Are you ready, Jenna?
Sure. I think overall the forming character is really playful and fun, and I really appreciate the consideration of the existing townhouse. The image that you had really makes it feel part of the community, which is really nice, but it also has its own voice and character as well. So I think you found a really nice balance there. Agree with, I think a lot of people brought it up, with the entrances and finding a way, whether it's architectural or through color or through
Funky
a
signage even to-
cool signage. It could be
Yeah.
a cool art piece like youth or I don't know, something, but whatever it may be, whether it's architectural or color or art, I mean, you'll think of something fantastic. I really appreciate the continuous canopy. In this climate, it's just such a great amenity for the winter months. And if going to the site plan, I really do support the elimination of some of that parking. Usable open space is really valuable, and if that does happen, if there is some sort of canopy structure that could be incorporated, maybe it's one of the sail type of structures or something like that, as a potential consideration. I think the grading to the skate park, if that parking goes away, could become something pretty fun.
Yeah, you can make a,
Yeah, like
make a feature of
that big
stepping it
grade
up.
change. Yeah, and particularly referencing the riparian and getting some topo in there, I think would be pretty fun for the youth to be able to use. The planting list, I appreciate it. There's a lot of diversity in there. There's a lot going on, and it's looking really great. I always say just it'd be good to do just one pass at it from a pollinator perspective, just to see if we have that nectar opportunity throughout the seasons. It's kind of a small win for sustainability. I really like the site furnishings that were selected as well. I think they'll fit really nicely with the building. And then just a small one with the split rail. It's just an opinion, but I would encourage something shorter rather than taller. The precedent image, I think, is a really nice detail, but maybe taller than necessary, so you still kind of feel like you can experience the riparian even though you can't go in. But that's a small detail. But overall, really great. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you for the presentation, and echoing your remarks again, the integration of form is very, playful and artistic, and it gives a great pride of place to whoever's going to live there. Just comments on the park space, as well as both main entrances to the youth center and is to use artistic elements, both architectural and from artists who are plenty in our community, thankfully, as well as the youth, have them buy into the place by creating artistic elements and places where they can play creatively and feel proud to live there and play there. So you have a lovely park area in the front there. I don't know what kind of furnishings you're going to put in there, but love to see natural sculpture as well as artistic sculpture in there.
Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate the layout of the site plan. I think it's a challenging site. I know that area fairly well. I'm in support of the parking variance to make that a green space. I think it, connects the skate park to the center, through multiple services, hard, soft, hard. Like it just would work really well. And I don't know that you would need to continue the parking lot down to where it exists either right now. Like I think that's fine to leave if it's a riparian issue. For the entry, for articulation there, and just punching that up a bit, I think the main roof is maybe a bit overdone. Maybe a simplified roof would, sort of dial back that a little bit, and then you could put the articulation back into the entry. I think there's kind of a lot going on there. I'm not sure that it's doing what you're intending it to do. And then just articulation on the ends. I don't know if maybe you could bump out the two-bedroom units, maybe just pop those out a foot or so just to give it some depth on those ends.
That's a good idea.
And then the shake, is it a blue or a gray? Sorry, I missed that on the palette.
I think that one's more the blue.
It's more of a blue?
Yeah.
Blue shakes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, so it's this color.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's a darker blue actually.
Yeah,
Correct.
it's darker than the renderings show.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. Just a preference, but gray might work a little better.
Like a darker gray instead of the blue.
Yeah,
Age a little better.
I just feel the blue is a little bit like, ooh, but that's just an opinion. Yeah, otherwise it's, for affordable housing, I think it's, you guys are making some good moves here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the building looks great. I think my comments are just around the parking. Coming into the meeting, I thought maybe it might have been a concern getting rid of those extra spots, but after your presentation, I think it's a no-brainer that they should go. I think it'd be a big asset to the youth center to have that extra space for outdoor use. So I think that should be a must for sure. The other thing too is if there is any overflow parking needed for the skate park, I hadn't really considered it, but with the high school there and the hours that people are actually using the skate park and when people are actually parking at the high school are they work well. So I don't think you probably need that extra parking at all. So I think that's something that hopefully the district can consider. Yeah, other than that, I think it looks good.
I'd say too, I think even if we got stuck with the parking as it is, I hope we get those 12 stalls out. But another thought we had is if that's the way it has to be, maybe we put removal boulders or something and we do it in pavers, so at least it's there to meet bylaw. Maybe it's needed as overflow, but then you can boulder it off and then it's turned over to the youth too, if we're left with that as a scenario. So.
Yeah, I think it just ties the skate park to the youth center really well if that was usable space, not for cars.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I always like affordable housing projects because I find you can usually get away with more simplified building forms, and I prefer those generally. But so that said, I think what you've done doesn't look particularly simplified. I think it looks. This could be a market project in Squamish quite easily by some people. Yeah, I just echo the comments already said. Supportive of a parking reduction. I maybe recommend looking at what capacity there is on Carson Place. Like if you were to put in some parallel parking, even just with paint. I remember it being quite a wide road, but might be something you could look at. That could take your overflow parking for the skate park. Yeah, so, the road to the south.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
From the public art standpoint, if there was an opportunity to incorporate public art somewhere, it may be in the kind of step-in where the staircase is. If you change the material, like the material there, I think right now it's proposed to be shingle, but maybe if you went with a hardy panel or something, that could be looked at for a mural at some point in the future done by some generous community members or something like that.
Like on the face on the side of the building?
Yeah, exactly. On the front face there.
Okay.
You've got windows there, but it seems like there's very few places where there isn't a bunch of different materials, so maybe that's the one place that could get a feature. Just an idea. But yeah, looking forward to seeing this built, but I only wish it was taller and had more units.
Overall, I think it looks pretty good. I mean, I'm going to echo what everybody else has said about the entrance. It needs to be more clear where it is. With parking, I think that removing that extra parking would be a benefit. I wanted to comment that right now, in the guidelines, it's asking for 10% of residential units to be universally designed. Right now you've got about 5. So I would really encourage you to double that what you thought, and then you could actually include extra accessible parking without losing any parking adjacent to the outside parking spots to use the access tunnel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember which ones were.
So have more accessible stalls?
Well, if you're going to have more units, you're going to need more accessible.
Are you guys?
Oh, like more accessible units.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Right now you have 1 on each floor.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
which is 5%.
Okay.
And then just to make comments that you should have your outside amenity tables have extended tops so that you can have them be accessible at either end. In the community shower, make sure you've got a handheld shower so it can be used by somebody. Looks like you've got enough space in there. You've got in the bike storage, you might want to consider having electrical outlets if you have e-bikes. Your appliances are going to need to be usable by somebody in a seated position, right? Have your, right? Your fridge is going to have to be side by side or feet on the bottom.
Yeah.
You should really think about having the windows a bit lower so you can actually look out the window. So that way, to be consistent, you'd have to do it all the way across all of your windows. But it doesn't need to be lower by much.
I think fairly low.
I think they're fairly low right now, but
Yeah,
I can't really remember.
It wasn't clear whether they were.
They're all about 1'6" or so in the living areas, but the bedroom areas might need to get lower than for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Perhaps,
more in the living areas where you can see
Okay.
them.
I think the living room windows, the sill of the windows in the living spaces are about 1.5 feet off the floor, so quite low already.
Oh, and then just with the reports for the laundry, those would be front loads. And then I would just, try and encourage the pathway, where the connection is going to be as accessible as possible, or have a good route, whether or not the other ones could be graded. If one is going to be, at 8.5%, then you can try and find a 5% route somewhere.
We're good, most places, it's that connection to the top bowl of the skate park, which is our challenging piece because it's built up so high, but other than that, it's fairly flat, so that should be easy to accomplish.
Cool. Yeah, that's good. And I think it would be fun to have the youth involved in some sort of art project around the youth center. Would be
Yeah.
really cool. Great, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. It's an exciting project. Excited to see a social project come forward like this, especially in partnership with the district, and then also to see the renewal of the youth center. As a citizen, I've often looked at that building down there and wondered how my kids are going to use it when they become teenagers in 4 or 5 years. So it's great that a project like this will come on stream hopefully within that time, and then just broader for the district as a whole as an alternative in those darker months for youth to use. With respect to the questions, I think materials, they're appropriate for the project. I hate for a design panel to load it up with too many expensive materials, and I think the proponent has struck an appropriate balance between liability of the project and then longevity and maintenance for the initial owner. The entrance and the roof, there wasn't really enough in the package for me to make a comment, but I feel the discussion I've heard today that the applicant and staff can work that out in the future. So no problems there. The parking, fully support the variance of parking and that use of area for greater youth programming. Don't have many ideas, perhaps a passive space or some explicit programming, but again, I think staff can work that out. The only comment I'd make about parking is just the extent of surface parking given in the riparian area, exploring within means some sort of permeable or stormwater management or swales or something just to minimize that runoff. Otherwise, great project. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's a wonderful project for affordable housing. Just a few little comments, as I mentioned, maybe entrance can be worked a bit more prominent. I suggest it might be a good idea to have access to the mailroom from inside rather than only from outside.
For the mail?
It's only from outside.
Yeah, I think it's changed. The post office delivers it there, and then it's accessed from the inside. He backfeeds the boxes, but that's changing now.
Yeah, I think the owner recently said they might prefer an exterior mailbox altogether.
Like on the site.
Down on the site in the more in the parking area.
Okay.
For security and so forth.
I see. Okay, and I'm not sure if the laundry is accessible, but we'll check that, I'm sure.
Yeah, BC Housing has pretty tight standards on that. It will be if we haven't shown it.
And suggest that if you make the post as suggested, to make it more cosmetic rather than a structural for the less headache in future.
For which?
Slanted
The columns?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you make it cosmetic, I think we'll have far more, less problems.
Yeah.
Structurally, if you just cantilever it, I think it will be much easier to handle.
Oh, we just can't leave the balconies and lose the,
I
yeah.
think you can. It's not that deep.
Yeah. Yeah, save money and it's nicer on the liability too, right? So not to have that wood out there.
Exactly. Lots of headache with those posts.
Sure. Thanks.
Good. Yeah, again, I echo my panel members' opinion on a lot of the items, and I think it's really great to see these kind of projects going forward. So my comments would be to encourage to make it more affordable and simplify its design and its maintenance requirements. And those would go with, I would support getting rid of that parking 12 stalls, you gain 6 back up, unless your fire truck turnaround still needs to be performed.
Yeah, we looked at that. I think we easily have 90 meters to both front entries, so I don't think we need it. But
Good.
we'll
Okay,
verify the fire
excellent.
department.
Again, encourage a strong pedestrian connection, whatever the future of the properties are to the south, because I think that's really how this place gets fed. And we want to discourage as much car travel and encourage more other modes as possible. The plant list I've just got into a little bit more, and it seems a bit odd to me. It's a very extensive plant list, and I think it could be simplified both from a affordability perspective and a maintenance perspective. Like for example, on the east side, you've got new Thuya placata going in 2 meters on the center of the 2 meter western red cedars, probably a meter from the building or 2. I think we're going to want light coming in on the east side. I would hazard a guess that you could use more riparian plantings that will stay low and allow more light to get in on that northeast exposure. Because you're just going to be beating back that forest, right? But there's some pretty heavy planting going on.
And were we trying to make tree bylaw there? There's a reason why we're loading that up too. We thought we have a heavy forest there, right? And then we're adding plants in front of a dense
in 4
forest.
years, you're going to be cutting those suckers down.
I think.
Yeah, Crossroads, we'll look at that. There
Yeah.
is a guideline that this is also ringing a bell. There's some guideline that talks about like an evergreen buffer or something like that between, but we'll look at that.
I mean,
Yeah.
Because I think I'd rather.
can't see the forest for the trees.
I'd rather. Yeah, I think I'd prefer in there too.
And the plant list is pretty extensive, and some of them are kind of odd choices, like there's Quercus garryana, which is Gary oak, which this is its northern limit, but it's found on a rocky outcrop high on the bluffs. It's seldomly, probably never found in the slough. So those and yucca, and so they're a bit exotic, and I know a parking lot is not a natural spot, so there you use introduced species, but I think on the edges there's maybe more opportunity to look around and use more of the riparian palette, and that would be maybe more affordable too. Parking surface design, I'd encourage kind of broken curbs that could bed into some detention areas or even in these riparian areas with the appropriate plantings to capture any oil deposits or systems that would do that. And avoid as much piping as possible. The entrance, maybe that can be handled as more of a canopy extension. It looks like you've got room to punch out more canopy there.
Yeah.
My comments on the glow lamps, I think that should be considered or reconsidered just as long for longevity and maintenance. Really hard to paint those guys. Recoat them. And the pop-ups, I'm not a real big fan of them. I think they're kind of dressing up the box, and I think you could get away with a really kind of honest, simple. It's a flat roof building. Make it a flat roof building. But other than that, I think on many other levels, you guys are showing great restraint, and that's what should be happening in social housing. So, good project. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's a very thoughtful project for the location, and it's going to work really well down in there.
I'd say my comment on that parking area is that I enthusiastically support a flex style use in that area. Given that there's lots of green space, there's no shortage of green space around there. I don't know if we need to be really seeking that as much. There's a park, there's lots there. I would say probably best to ask the skaters and the youth in the area what they would see that area best as. And they might tell you that asphalt would be the best use because you could play full court basketball, you could skate on it, do street skate comp or something like that. Play hockey, who knows? So they might have the best commentary on that. And then if there was an event or some reason why you need overflow or more parking, it can be opened up for that as well. So flex might be the best option there on that one. So
and that's at least resistance too, but we'll explore the other, all the options.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know if these things always have to be adamantly one thing or the other. It'd be great if we can start to look at shared uses depending on the load and the time of day and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's my comment, and I think at this point we've recorded everything and we won't have a vote. We'll leave it to staff and to take care of it with you, and good luck with everything. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Welcome back to Advisory Design Panel, and we'll be continuing with item number 2, which is BP 490, 1500 and 1606 Scott Crescent. And we'll hand over to our planner, Kerry Hamilton.
Hello everyone, my name is Kerry Hamilton. I'm a planner at the District of Squamish. And we also have Dave Merrow here, who will be the engineer on the project, so should there be any questions around that, he's happy to come to the table and help answer them as well, if this team can't already answer them for you. So this is a development permit for 2 sites, so 1500 and 1606 Scott Crescent. It's DP 490, and it's for just the south site. So there's an image on the report here that just show you that this is the first phase of the development. It includes, as per the rezoning and land development agreement, it includes phases 1, 2, 4. There are 6 phases in total with the Scott Crescent or Red Ridge development. So staff overall don't see any major concerns with the design, but do want the panel's comments on a few specific items. They include just material and color palette. The architects have presented a rationale for the materials that they've provided, and staff's just seeking this panel's and expertise on if that is suitable for Squamish. As well as the Highway 99 facade, particularly, we have Development Permit Guidelines 8, which is on the Highway 99 corridor, and we have a lot of specific language in that Development Permit Guideline around what that facade should look like, and so just want to get the panel's opinions on how this development is meeting those guidelines. Staff are also looking just for some comments around the play area. This is a large development. This will be a central amenity to this space, so just want to hear the panel's comments on that. The commercial frontage, staff's just seeking an architectural design review of the space to recommend ways to bolster the commercial area with unique elements to help differentiate the space from the rest of the residential development. And the last piece is around roof variation. So DPA 3 provides full sections of guidelines on roofs, and this development predominantly proposes flat roofs, with the exception of the amenity area and townhouse units. So staff is seeking ADP's review of the 3 apartment buildings and the commercial frontage to see where more roof variation may be or could be accommodated, if that is how the panel sees it. That's it for me.
All right, Scott Kennedy, Cornerstone Architecture. Joe Kaplan's going to run the show and run a lot of the graphics for us. Peter Kreuk, landscape architect. Ron Bijak is developer representative, and Andrew Bobbins, architect on the Cornerstone on the project.
Thank you.
So, welcome to Redbridge. Can we get the highlights on the screen out there a little bit? That'd be useful. So, Redbridge the site has been around for a long time, and it's had a rezoning. I don't know if the panel is fully aware of all of the work that was done on the rezoning, and we're really here now for a development permit in accordance with the rezoning that has already been put together. So we'll go to the next slide. So The context of the location of the site, it's on the Mamquam Channel. It has wonderful views at certain points of the site of the Chief. It has a lot of frontage on the Mamquam Channel. It's very close to downtown. It's quite an accessible site. We're going to enhance that access to downtown with a bridge that's coming. We have a unit mix of 144 one-bedrooms, 145 two-bedrooms, and 26 three-bedrooms. The three-bedrooms are a combination of some apartments and some townhouses, as are the two-bedrooms. The building was going to be built to step code 3, which is the current standard in Squamish, and we've been doing some energy analysis to make sure we can meet those standards. We can go to the next slide, Jim. So we have a lot of off-site work that we've had to do, and there's a lot of issues that came up during working through the project. So we have some flood proofing, so we're going to be raising the grade of the road about 2.5 to 3 feet above the current grade to meet some flood proofing requirements, which is a 5-meter requirement. Actually, it's more than that, actually. More like 2 meters up. Quite a bit. So that necessitates how we work the road. It's necessitated some work that we're going to have to do into the Mamquam Blind Channel to create a nice riparian edge there. There are a couple of property line problems in the riparian area that we're still working our way through because they're government-owned lots rather than just water. They're actually physical water lots, so there's some legal issues we're still working through. So those are the kind of things that we're working on. We're doing intersection upgrades as we come off the highway. We're doing an intersection upgrade way up at the other end of Scott Road. Back when you enter the highway, we've got some intersection upgrades we're doing there. It's really part of the rezoning and the development agreements. We are going to be putting a bus stop onto the site. And so the way the bus is going to work will come off the highway. We've created a turnaround there. So the idea of the turnaround was so that heavy trucks and buses and things don't have to traverse that hill up Scott Crescent, which is very steep. And it's going to be a real challenge to actually build for us. So in order to minimize the traffic up there, we felt we put this cul-de-sac in, which has been well received. So that's how the traffic's going to work. In terms of utilities, there's a major water line that services that we have to maintain service as we go build this thing. So there's some challenges there. There's also a sewer lift station sort of in front of where our commercial area is, which we're proposing to basically screen it as part of our work. So far we haven't noticed any concerns with the odors coming from it. It seems to be pretty good. And then we're upgrading Scott Crescent all the way up the hill, which will include a multi-use path. So we have a multi-use path that's going to come down the hill, follow along around the cul-de-sac and connect up over the bridge to the highway. And as part of the first phase build, but not, but we haven't quite finished yet, is there's a new bridge crossing that's going to take place at the north end of the north site. There's a sort of see that diagonal line there. That'll be a bridge that'll connect through to Rose Park. And those details of that are still being worked out.
So I was supposed to talk about trails, but Scotty's done that, so, so we're good. But a big part of this is linkages and linking into existing trail systems and networks. And when you look especially at the landscape drawing, you can see that along the waterfront there's a new trail network, and that links into all the way around Scott Crescent. Along the highway, it's the multi-use trail, drives pedestrians. And there's a number of secondary trail systems through the site itself so that you can wander from part to part on the site. You'll see that more again on the landscape drawings as you take a closer look. We're really dealing with two significant phases. The first phase is what we've been talking about, and then the stuff that's off to the north side happens later. As part of that trail network there, we're talking about incorporating some component of public art, whether it's in the bridge itself or at the intersection area. We've been talking about that. On the blind itself, we've been asked to look at the possibility of a kayak launch. So we're exploring that right now with staff. And so that's all part of the amenity package that we're looking at right now.
Okay, so yes, that's fine. I think we're good. So this is an early rendering idea of what the bridge will be like, and we can come back to that as I think we have another image of it at some point. But what we wanted to talk about a little bit now is the massing of the building. So the intent of what we're doing is along the road, we wanted to keep the scale to kind of pedestrian scale. So it's a 3-story townhouse massing pretty much along the pedestrian, public pedestrian roads. And that also has that sort of 1-story double height commercial massing that's also fronting that road. And then the taller buildings are in the back, really nestled up against the escarpment and the very tall trees that are behind there. So what we have done is we kept the middle of the building, the middle sections, the tallest, and the 2 end buildings have a step about the middle of the building to take 1 story out of them. So it's really 4 levels on a podium at the highway. It then goes to 5 levels on a podium, and it stays the second half of that building. Then the middle building is 5 levels on a podium, and then the last building steps down, which is really, again, to 4 levels on a podium at the end, although the podium is actually 2 stories at that end, just because of the way the grading works. So that's really the general massing plan that we had to try to minimize the effect on the public. So let's maybe go to the next view here. There's the bridge. So this is this is the notional idea where we want to go with the bridge. It's a wooden, primarily wooden structure. We thought we'd try to create a place in the middle of the bridge that would be a nice place to sit, put your back on a bench, look up at the chief, get involved with the water. And we're playing around with the idea of a handrail that's maybe a little informal in its feel, so it waves back a little bit, moves up and down a little bit, all wood technology. And this is kind of where we're going with our bridge design at the moment, but it's got a long, long ways to go before we're, and it's not part of this development permit per se. Okay, go to the next one, Joe. All right, so there's a little more aerial view of the massing of the project and how we've organized it. It's got the commercial really near the highway, that piece near the highway, the townhouses in the middle. We then have an amenity space, an adult amenity space at the north end of this south site. There are entrances to the parkade. Actually, maybe go to the plan, Joe. We got a plan there now? There. Okay. So there are entrances to the parkade. As you come off the highway, there's one, there you go, one right there. That's an entrance that serves both the residential and the commercial, and it has a loading area and it has garbage, all service all from that area. And then we have another entrance right there, which goes into the lower part of our parkade and serves the residential. And then we have a third entrance at the back right there that goes into the upper part of the parkade. There's one internal ramp within the parkade to move around within the parkade. So we felt having extra entrances was helpful to the traffic and making sure we could minimize some of this disruption and keep the traffic flowing. So that's really how we've chosen to do that. We have a big courtyard in the middle of the project, and our intent of that courtyard is to keep it vehicular free. It does serve the purpose of firefighting lanes, and there's a turnaround in the middle there. You'll see it, a little T, to serve the fire trucks. So the fire trucks can access, particularly the middle building is the one that's the most vulnerable in terms of fire access. So that lane is intended for that purpose. We're going to bring mail and parcel delivery to either end. So we have an amenity area up on the top. There's a mail parcel delivery area there. And we have another mail parcel area delivery associated with the commercial end of the building. And that's how we've planned kind of mail and all of those kinds of things. I guess maybe we can go to the next plan there, Joe. So this is our lowest level of the project. And you can see the blue area there is the commercial piece. It is clustered around a parking court. We're going to surface that parking court with a stamped concrete, so it's got a little bit of character. The idea is that it could be closed off and used for a little community event, or a little bicycle rendezvous place to start a bicycle event or a climbing event, or a little public market event or something. We want to leave it so it's programmable to do that and has some character for that. Most of this ground level is parking. You see quite a large parking area. There is a very large bike bike and storage area. So these are a series of individual lockable lockers, and we're looking at a higher quality locker, like a high quality bike locker in all of these for all of those things. And people can store bikes in them. We can also store camping equipment in them. And it's accessible in a number of places off of that parkade, so you don't have to go too far. There are cores, elevator cores. Each building has an elevator in either end, and all of those cores are serviced from the parkade, so you can fairly quickly get to your unit from the parkade. And then that yellow area up at the top is kind of our adult-oriented amenity space. That's how I'd organize, I'd take that. So we'll go up another level. So when you get up another level, we have another level of parking. It takes a lot of parking for these projects, unfortunately. And what we have done is to the front of the parking, we have a series of like one-story townhouses. The idea, they're kind of standard apartments, but they function like townhouses. It'd be great for somebody who has a dog that wants to be able to access directly outside. It helps bring up the scale, and as we look to the massing, you'll see that the building steps, and it gives kind of a nice podium feel to the building. Oh, and I guess there's a sort of another children's amenity or family amenity area right there, which we'll talk to in the future, and then there are a couple of 3 guest suites there as well. Again, they form part of a later phase as we look at how this project's going to work. And the building will also be built in even this part will be built in 3 or 4 phases. Starting from the amenity, going down to the middle building, then to the highway building. We're not sure when the townhouses are going to happen. That's something we're still talking about. And next slide, please. Joe. This would just give you the organization of the suites. We have quite a variety of suite types and sizes in the building. And maybe go up another level, Joe. We have some podiums. We do have sloped roofs on the townhouses where we're looking down on them from above, from the project. And we have a green roofs on the commercial space where we're looking down on it. And there's a little strip of roof that doesn't show as green roof, but the decision has finally been made to do it green roof along the edge. So basically, when you're in the units looking down at the site, you're either seeing sloped roofs or green roofs for the most part. And then we do have a rooftop amenity area up at and that is accessible by elevator from our adult area. So the idea is we have a kind of a sky lounge, a sky place to hang out up in the treetops with beautiful views, and you'll be able to look back to the chief and you'll be able to look out on the Fly Channel from there. Okay, I think we're good. So now we'll talk about the commercial area. So this little area right here up front. So maybe the next slide there, Joe. So we have this great desire. We see this commercial as a real amenity for the project. It becomes a focal point for the community that has some commercial amenity. Now it's going to come later in the building as we move through, so we'll have some buildings and people in place before we actually are able to create this amenity. We have tenants in mind. We have a coffee shop in mind, which we'd like to build in this part of the amenity space or the commercial space, and we would really love to have a brew pub up in the other place. So a restaurant or brew pub, something like that, and we've tried to create some patio spaces associated with that, so it becomes both on the highway side and on the Mankind Line Channel side, and we're looking at some screening of those patios for noise along the highway, but having them on the highway just so that you get that presence on the highway to bring the business in. And it's important that we, I don't think this project in itself can support all that commercial, so we do want to have some commercial in some way for other people to enjoy it and to help keep it alive and make sure that it thrives. It's important if we're going to build it that it thrives. So that's kind of what we ought to with the commercial. I think it's probably a view of it here and there. So that's kind of looking from the SketchUp model towards that commercial space basically from the bridge, from the edge of the bridge, looking back to it. And we have quite a bit of glass and things facing the highway. All right. Where are we at now? Townhouse. Okay, so along the street we have it's a stacked townhouse set. And let me go to the next slide, Joe. So the way these work is the blue area is a 2-bedroom, 2-story townhouse with a front patio that faces to the street. And the green areas represent a 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom and lock-off townhouse that enters from our courtyard, but it also has direct access from the parkade. So you can come in from the parkade and go up to the first level and then go up to the top level. So it's quite a functional unit, and we have created, it could be a little lock-off suite, it could be a master bedroom, it could be, it's a very flexible space for whoever wants to purchase the unit, and we're not sure how it's going to function yet. So we have about 4 or 5 different designs that we've looked at for it, and we'll see what the marketing, how the marketing wants to treat it. All right, I think let Peter talk about the street edge. This is the townhouses.
Yeah, townhouses down on Scott Crescent itself. The patios will all be slightly raised, so 18 inches to 2 feet up. There'll be a clear definition of edge, so when you're sitting down, you have a level of privacy, but when you're standing up, you can appreciate the views across the street into the blind. And it's a fairly friendly edge, and it's something that we've found very successful in townhome developments, that as long as I can get outside and I can sit down and have a level of privacy, that's nice, but when I'm standing up, I can appreciate my neighbors and people walking by and what's going on.
And then the next view is from the courtyard.
Yeah, and that's where Scott was talking about, you know, the backyard space, or the upstairs unit. And we have a similar situation here where they all have defined outdoor patio spaces with some planting around it. That's on parkade at that point, so you'll see the raised planters and such to give us the sense of enclosure. And these all open up onto the circulation system, which opens up to the courtyard space.
All right, so apartments. So the apartments at the back are about 10% of these units will be adaptable, and they're fairly standard apartments, quite honestly, but very nice units with large decks. And I don't know if you have any plans of them, but they all have, there's some plans. So they all have very large outdoor deck spaces, looking either towards the chief or looking towards the channel or looking into the trees. They all have beautiful views on that lowest level. They have some quite large terraces, and you can see that trellis-like element along the edge there. That gives some nice scale from the courtyard up to that terrace. That trellis gives us a nice horizontal line, and then we have the buildings behind. So we're trying to break down the scale both in depth and in height as we move through. The blue units are 2 or 3 bedroom units. The green units are 1 bedroom units. That's the middle building, but it's a very typical suite mix. And we've tried to make sure that on the ends we have some privacy, and we're not looking right into other units, and we've been working with all the windows and stuff to do that. There are some paths that Peter can talk about that cut through into that as we kind of move along. We have one thing we do want to talk about, and it came up, is this is the relationship to the neighbor. So maybe we'll go to that slide. So this is a view, of the apartments from the courtyard. So you can see that we have our fire access lane that really functions as really a play space, a hangout space. It's a paved surface that we can use for activities in the courtyard. We then have 1 level townhouse apartment type units with their own patios. And then we have these ground level apartments that have these much larger decks on top, stepped back. And then we have 4 levels of typical suites with the top level having vaulted ceilings and quite dramatic living rooms. And then everybody has the large decks. This would be views inside the penthouse unit at the top. So these get you some idea of some quite nice scale, large windows, beautiful light that happens inside. And, okay, so now we just wanted, there's a house here, you can just see it right there. So that is the one house that's very, very close to the project. It's about just over 50 feet from the edge of that house to our nearest building. This is the house. It actually is designed internally to view to the chief. So it doesn't actually it doesn't have major windows facing towards the project. And if you can see the view on the right, you'll see that that the trees on the site, which are quite tight to that building, some of them are on their site, some of them are on our site, actually are higher than the house. So the project does get quite close to that house. You can see the section there. And it is taller than the house. But it's fairly well shielded by the escarpment and the landscape and the fact that the house orients itself towards the cheek. Those are the living room windows there, as near as we could tell, over at the garage there. And again, the left-hand view is as close as we could get to even see the back of the house. We can't see it from anywhere, and we can't figure out how to even approach it. And that's taken from a little path. There's a little public path that comes from the end of that cul-de-sac onto our site, which we are proposing to connect to our network of paths as part of the project. So there's a section there that'll give you a pretty good idea of what that is looking like. And I think we'd like to, I guess if we need to go back to the plan, the other thing we wanted to point out is that that section is taken at the lower part of the roof there. And then the higher part of that front building is really beyond, it's really back from that existing house where it actually steps up. So we just wanted to point that out. Okay. Well, let's go on to let Peter talk a little bit about courtyard.
Well, really, what we were attempting to do everywhere we were dealing with this, whenever we had residential uses meeting the ground or meeting the podium, we want to make sure we had patio spaces there and uses for those, so they can get outside and use those spaces. All those spaces are then connected to an internal trail system or let's call it an external trail system. So wherever we have outdoor patios and we touch the ground, we can then access the trail system and pretty well get ourselves all the way around the site without having to go through the building itself. Now, some of these are sometimes just call them goat trails, but it's a fairly tight site and there's some fairly significant grades we need to deal with, but we'll be able to incorporate those trails into the network, especially on the outside edge. Internally, with the courtyard space, starting from the west side, there's, as part of the building itself, there's an amenity space that's being developed. And that's supported externally with an outdoor gathering for that, as well as a kids' play. The kids' play is geared towards young kids. So it's, I call them ankle biters, but just young kids who are with their parents or with their grandparents or whatever, out there using the space and using the social spaces in the building itself. As the kids get a bit older, we're living in a playground here, so they're not going to be hanging around in the courtyard space. They're going to be out on the blind or out on the bridge or doing what older kids do. So the kids' play area is designed for the youngest. It's got some natural elements in it, a couple play elements, which will make it interesting and challenging for them. And then the rest of the courtyard itself, you saw the images of the fire access route, which is really quite a nice little play space for people learning how to ride a bike and things of that nature. There's some bermed areas there. A lot of this courtyard space is on terra firma. It's not on the parquet. So we're able to bring in some significant trees, lots of natural vegetation. So the idea is to create a little mini forest in there with some berming and such so the kids can play on those elements. And there's lots of places for people to sit and talk and gather and socialize.
So here's the children's play area. We might as well just keep on going. So actually we can talk a little bit about this. So what we've done is we've identified that families need a space for birthday parties, that teens need a space to hang out. So we're proposing in this part of the building to build a teen lounge. We're going to have it visually supervised from the lobby so that it is got some, we want to try to make it as accessible as possible to teens without locking it up and only, that kind of idea. So we're still working on exactly how we'll police it. But we think something with a pool table or a ping pong table and some games and maybe a video game screen, that kind of thing. So the idea is there's a teen lounge, there's a couple of sports spaces, and then we have another open space that's got a kitchen and it's kind of a family rec room. The idea of this space is it's for kids' birthday parties, and it opens to a covered outdoor space, that little gray area, so we can have some tables outside. that could be used in the rain, because it does rain a little bit here. And then I'll go and let Peter talk a little bit further on the upper side there.
Yeah, as we step out of the covered area, there's some, what we like to call the harvest table, so the place where you can have family gathering, and there's some barbecues and sinks and all sorts of things to support it. Further to the left, off the edge of the commercial. And then the kids' play area itself is fairly organic, introduction of plant material. Within it, 5-bar and paving systems and balanced beams, logs. Because of the red bridge, we have a red tunnel. We're playing with some of those sorts of things. So there's some linkages to the name. And then various other play elements in there itself. But then, there you go. That starts to tie. There's some wood structures, trellis structures, and things of that nature which help the space.
Yeah. All right, so now we have a very special part of the project, which is the amenity building up at this far end. It'll be built as part of the first phase. It includes a sky lounge, and it's really quite a. Might as well go to the 3D, or is that? That's the 3D view of it. So it's we've given it some sloping roof character. We brought a lot of Squamish rock in there. We're trying to make it a very, very special part of the project. So we'll go to the plan here, Joe. So the way this works is it's designed to serve this phase. It's also designed to serve part of the north side across the street as part of the project. There's an entry. We have maybe I'll get you to tourist, Joe. So there's an entry that comes off of our central courtyard, and a little entry vestibule there. From there, there's a little quiet yoga room off to the side here. So it's for yoga and maybe bar exercise, those kind of quieter types of exercise spaces. There's a meeting room for right there for some work-related meetings. So the next space, the big open space there, is, we call it, it's like a WeWork space. So it's a co-working space. The idea of it is if you are home working, but you want to have that bit of social environment, you can go down and work into this space. We have some images we'll show you later. So it's really a co-working space. It's intended for informal use by all of the residents. And we have mail pickup happening in this space. The idea of that is that we do bring some traffic to the space through the mail pickup area, and then off of that we have a little maker lounge. So right there is a maker lounge. It'll be fit up with some various devices. We're still working a little bit with the realtors exactly what we think that's going to have. So craft functions and maybe some light building functions that would happen in there. And then actually across from that we have a bike maintenance facility. So in this area you'll be able to bring your bike in. You'll be able to repair it, you'll be able to wash it, you'll be able to bring your dog in here and you'll be able to wash the dog. We've been playing around with some other ideas about how to dry camping equipment, all that kind of stuff in that area. So the idea is we have something that supports real life in that space. And from there we lead into some storage lockers that'll be for everybody. So everybody will have a storage locker that's designed to hold bikes and can have some shelving in it for camping equipment and whatever else you might do. And they have solid doors. You can't see into them at all. They're metal, they're solid, just for security reasons. And we'll be breaking that room up into chunks so that with secured access to each chunk so that you can't rifle through the whole room. That's something we're working on there. Now then we come back into our central space. Up at the top there we have, this is really a lounge space. This is intended to have maybe a family party in there. It's got one TV space, it's got a fireplace, it's got a kitchen. It would be open during the day for the WeWork group to use, but it's bookable, so it can be closed off. It'll have its own direct outside entry, and it also has access to a patio. Let Peter talk about the patio and some outdoor spaces. We'll do that. Okay. We'll do it again. We'll come back to it. And then then the last big major piece is the gym. So we have a gym. It'll have a little bit of a bouldering wall given this is Squamish, you've got to have a bouldering wall. So it'll have it at the end, and then it has some exercise spaces. Again, it can go to an outdoor patio. There are some change rooms there, and the change rooms then lead to some outdoor tubs. We have a red light therapy room, which seems to be an interesting theme. And we also have a sauna in there, a bit more of a community-based sauna, and it has glass windows in it that'll look out towards the Mount Tremblant Channel. And want to let you go from there, Peter?
Yeah, well, from a landscape perspective.
Let's go to a couple images. Sorry, Peter. I'll do that. So, oh, do we have an indoor image, or I guess we've got these in there. There we are. So that's what I was looking for. So you can see images of these spaces with the yoga room at the lower left, the lounge at the upper left, the WeWork space at the upper right, and then the gym space with bouldering wall at the lower right. Okay, we'll go back to the plan, let Peter talk about that.
Scott started his talk at the main entry sequence. So coming off of the courtyard spaces, the main entrance, we have it's canopied glass, and then we have a bridge structure, and off to, if you're walking in towards the building off the right-hand side of that, there's a water element there, which is fairly natural in character, using a lot of the big granite boulders and such. And the source of that water is off further to the right, off that wall there where the little hand is circling. So we have a fairly natural water feature with the source that comes through. So it gives us a fairly natural feel. And the plant material that we're using there is fairly, again, natural in concept. Adjacent to the lounge area, we have an outdoor barbecue eating area again. So it's another one of these harvest tables with a space. This space isn't associated with kids' play, it's much more adult-oriented and such, so it's a little bit more sophisticated there. Adjacent to that, to the gym, there's an outdoor exercise space which can double as some lounge. And this is all enclosed with a series of planting and fencing in order to create a sense of privacy and separation from Scott Crescent itself and the traffic in that area. The outdoor plunge pool and what do you call that, hot tub, all set out there in the space and are quite nicely oriented, and they complement each other. And then there's a little Zen garden next to that, as that relates to the activities that are happening inside, so that this whole thing is about it being a Zen garden, a relaxation spa, similar to what's happening in Whistler, but on a little bit smaller scale.
All right, I think that's pretty much the project for you. We do have a SketchUp model which we can load up and tour you around with any questions that come up. And anyways, I think that's the end of our presentation.
Thanks very much. Okay, so I'm just going to, before we go into some questions here, I'm just going to preface, or I'll give you a question of my own. Unless I was completely missing something, I didn't see copies of the amenity area floor plan, the commercial floor plan, or the child play area floor plan in the package that we had before the meeting today. So seeing it up on the screen, it's wonderful, but it's a very short time frame for me to be completely helpful as I would like to be, not having seen it beforehand. I'm not sure if any of my colleagues here feel the same way, but you might encounter a number of questions because I don't think we got to see those before today.
Apologize for that if we missed those. I thought we had. I guess only on a small scale.
At any rate, some information was difficult to find leading up to now, and I only say that because I really want to be more helpful to you today when we're here. But I found it a little bit challenging in my review, and I tried the files that were sent to us on both my Mac and my PC, and I just couldn't drill down to higher levels of resolution that you've shown us just now. So, with that said, you can start some questions.
Great. Good. Is this, the project fits zoning and there's no variance request?
Correct.
Okay. Heights, everything? Good. Okay. Highway access, that's all been approved by MOT, and egress lanes and entrance lanes are all satisfied?
It was done as part of the rezoning. The detailed design is still being finalized, but the general principles have all been.
There's been a discussion we're having right on Scott Crescent itself, and exactly where the bus is going to stop and start, but we're working through that.
Okay, good. The connection to town, you mentioned some connections to the city or the bridge. I don't see the bridge anywhere in plan.
It's not part of this current application. Yeah, it's not part of the current development permit application. However, there is a requirement for us to have the bridge built before the first occupancy. So it'll be worked on while we're marketing the project, assuming we get through the development permit process for that piece. But it is part of the. That's
Can you just show us on with a mouse where it is in plan?
Oh yes. So go to that overall. Go to that first slide of that. It was on that overall front. Right to the very front. There. So it's
I think we expect
it's that line there. It's really part of, it's really an extension of the other site. However, as part of the development agreement, we've committed to build that bridge in time for the opening of the first phase.
Okay. So any questions specific to that would be in the next application?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
I think we expect that there will be a process led by the municipality that would involve all the stakeholders involved in that.
Ron, could you come to the table?
Design.
Please come to the table because the cameras and the microphones can't feel us.
Sorry, I'm with Kingswood. As Scott said, we are obliged to deliver that bridge by the time we occupy the first phase, but it is a very complicated design process because of all the stakeholders, trails, environmental, and we expect there to be a whole process where all the stakeholders will be involved in the design.
Okay, thanks. Great. And the bus stop, bringing the bus in off the highway to do a little loop here and back out, that's been reviewed with BC Transit?
It has. We're still reviewing the details of it.
Okay, but conceptually they...
Correct.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Is there a need for commercial on a site like this? I mean, is that stipulated? Is that a requirement?
It's stipulated in the zoning as a requirement. We've had a lot of discussion about that in terms of minimum, maximum amounts. I do think that when the project's built out, it's large enough to support some level of commercial activity, whether it be, a coffee shop, maybe a small convenience store. I think it's desirable to have some, and I see it as an amenity for the project. The trick will be when we get closer to building that phase, finding the right leaseholders to really make it alive. But it is a requirement of the project, and it's been delivered for that reason.
Okay, and last question, just was there any thought about making the commercial end of the building or the highway end of the building and that commercial space read very differently or different from the rest of the building?
We hadn't felt that was the right move. Quite honestly, we wanted to make it feel like part of the project, and I think there would be, it'll have signage, it'll have other things. I think that where we feel we might have some more work is actually to differentiate the residential entry from the commercial. I think that's where we as a group have said we need to do a little more work here yet. Again, that'll be working drawings a couple phases from now, but we're going to do a material change on the ground plane and things like that too. It'll naturally feel like a residential entry because you'll see there'll be some lounges inside, chairs inside, that kind of stuff. But that's something we think we have a bit of work to do there.
Thank you. I appreciate your presentation. Unfortunately, as John mentioned, I didn't have much time reviewing it. I just got the package this morning and I just reviewed a few minutes. I had a bit of a difficulty seeing the details of the unit, so I cannot really basically comment about the shape because I can't see if it is walls or windows or it's not clear on the perspective and it's not clear actually in the plans. It's too small to see. Just judging very roughly, the C shapes that you have shown in the elevations, they don't have any depth. They're just change of material colors.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about that.
Building 1 and 3 3 seems to be brownish and the building 2 is white or lighter.
Lighter, yes.
It's just the color change.
Yes.
Otherwise, they are stacked.
They're very similar, yes. The suite plans are very similar, the
There's not
architecture is very similar.
back and forth,
Yeah.
recessed in volume, they're just a stack
Yeah.
of
I
blocks.
think we could give a little 3D character to that piece. We've been
Yes.
talking about that.
I
As
wish there was
something we frame up,
some
just
more
frame a little
depth
thickness
into
to
it.
the wall at that point. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But as I said, unfortunately, I can't see much because of the plans are too small. And I haven't had a chance to go through it quite fairly. So,
Fair enough.
Yeah, thanks. A lot in that presentation, so still trying to understand it, so just some clarification. So trying to understand the circulation around the site. So you mentioned trucks going up to that cul-de-sac and then turning around, or something about the grade. So what is the cul-de-sac? Is that just for buses, or does everybody go up, turn around?
The cul-de-sac, any heavier vehicles would come off the highway. They can only come off with a right-hand turn. They would do the cul-de-sac, go back onto the highway with a right-hand turn, and then have to turn around somewhere further down the highway. We only have a right-in, right-out access on the highway as part of the whole permitting process. So for standard passenger vehicles, you can go up the improved Scott Crescent hill and access the intersection that's the hospital.
Okay, and you feel that works for the site, for commercial
Yes,
traffic?
that was
servicing the site?
we've had traffic studies done, it was a major part of the rezoning. So that's been well vetted through the rezoning process, and the improvements we're doing to the streets are part of that.
Okay, and then just looking at the roof floor plans, so what is that? Is that a road that comes in between the townhouses and the main apartments? Is that a vehicle road?
That's
or-
just a fire access route.
Just a fire access road, that's hardscape?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really 20 feet wide to meet the requirements of fire access. It's going to be stamped concrete because we can't use pavers. The fire department doesn't want us to use pavers. So we're working with those, material that has some character but still meets those requirements of the fire department.
Okay, and then so to access your parking, if you live here, there's 2 accesses?
Three. One near the commercial, one near the cul-de-sac, and a third one off the back, about partway up Scott Crescent.
Okay, I don't see the one near the cul-de-sac, but I see the one off Scott and the one.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
one right off the cul-de-sac right there. Yeah, right where Joe's got the.
Oh, okay, but if you live in building 2, you still have to go all the way through building 3.
If you're living in
or
building 2,
one.
you would come into building 3. You'd come in one of the other 2 entrances to get there. And the parkade is fully connected, and there are really two elevator lobbies for each building. So there's 2 elevator lobbies in each building that come right down to the parkade. So depending which end of the building you're in, you can get into that elevator.
Okay. Okay, thanks for explaining that. Just switching topics, so what is your plan for sustainability? I see in the package you're meeting the minimum requirements of level 3, and then there's reference vaguely to a recognized sustainable strategies framework, but what are you doing there?
So at the moment, the sustainability part of the project is the level 3. We are doing some green roofs that'll help some of those kind of aspects. Our firm does a lot of passive house work, but this project was too far down the road to even come close to being those kinds of.
Yeah, I know you do, that's why I asked.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great to
It's a difficult.
bring some of your expertise.
Yeah. So we've been talking about energy switching for the hot water system. We haven't got there yet, but we've been discussing whether we could go to a heat pump system rather than going to a gas-fired hot water system. The decision just hasn't been made yet.
Sure, any sort of passive building elements?
Not particularly. It's a step 3, fairly conventional step 3 building.
Sure.
It does have HRVs, and they're mid-efficiency, I would call them. So there's good ventilation, which to me is an important part of just the livability of the building. There is some air conditioning available on the top seats, where we have the bigger windows.
Okay, so all mechanical. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
To do with the parking, so is this surface parking proposed to be your commercial?
Part of the commercial. It doesn't meet the full requirement, but at least part of the requirement for the commercial.
And the underground parking is it over height or is it just regular?
It's regular height, and so an overheight vehicle would have to use, well, let's say we have a 10-foot floor to floor, so we could have like a 7'6" clearance, which is the standard clearance for wheelchair accessible vans and stuff. That's what we do in the city of Vancouver. So certainly that kind of clearance would be able to accommodate. But if there was a bigger vehicle, we would expect it to use that surface parking lot.
And with the adaptable units, you said you're going to do 10%?
There are 10% of the units that are adaptable. There are, some of them are ones, some of them are twos. We've kind of created a plan. It's a fairly typical suite, but we've met the new BC building code adaptable guidelines for clearances at doors and clearances in kitchens and continuous countertops and between the stove and the sink and the stove and sink, if I recall rightly. So we have got a plan for that in 10% of the units, and one washroom that's accessible, bigger doors, thin doors. And you can go through the entire complex. At level 2, there's a corridor that literally will connect all 3 buildings together that runs right through the entire complex. And so you can get, there it is there, that orange corridor there. So what happens is from any building, you will be able to get all the way to the amenity. And it's all the elevators except for one tie into that corridor. That one there doesn't, but that building has 2 elevators, so the second elevator will tie into that corridor, and you'll be able to actually move right through the whole project, right to the amenity, all indoors if you wish to. I think it'll be nicer to move outdoors, but there isn't that ability to move indoors through it.
So is there, I mean, it's difficult for me to totally understand this. So if you wanted to go outdoors and you have to use the above ground parking, how do you travel there?
Well, okay, if you're saying if you wanted to go into the buildings and...
No, if I want to go to the end condo that's
right.
more, northwest, can I cross the underground parking garage? Is there then a pathway on this other side?
So I guess the question, I'm not sure why one would necessarily park in the surface parking lot if you wanted to go there. There is visitor parking.
If you're an overheight vehicle, you have to park there. You can't go in the underground.
When you say overheight, taller than 7'6"?
Yes.
Oh, really? Okay. 7'6" is the number that we've always heard for accessible, like for taller vans and things like that. We haven't provided at the moment for higher than that. We have 10-foot ceiling floor to floor, so
right.
10 feet floor to floor.
Irregardless.
Yeah.
Traveling, how are you traveling?
You would use the city sidewalk from there all the way to one of the entrances. That would be the best.
This is a crosswalk?
Yes, there's a crosswalk there. Yes, there's a crosswalk there. There's a city sidewalk. Both sides of the street have sidewalks, so there's a sidewalk that would run across the front of the townhouses. You could then go into the amenity building, and from there there's elevators up, or you could, if you wanted to access the middle building, you would have to go up the fire access lane, and then you could go into there. You could certainly park, there's street parking as well, that would all be overhead. There's curbside parking in front of all the townhouses. And that's been done because we wanted to have the ability for the public to access some of these facilities, like we have a kayak launch we're working on. So the idea was that if we had some street parking, it's available to the public to be able to access those things again.
And that's going to be double, both sides, parallel parking?
That's parallel parking both sides. They're narrow travel lanes. The idea is the travel lanes are fairly narrow to try to keep the speed of the cars down, but there is parking both sides.
Thank you.
Can you just expand on that? What's the width of the travel lane?
It was 10, but I think it's going to move 11, right? I think the bus has come to 11. So originally it was 10, but we're having to widen it to 11 because of the bus.
Can you speak a bit to just the evolution of the project from the rezoning package to now? What were the major changes? What were the major...
I think the biggest question was just the stepping of the unit. I think probably the first building, Ron, I don't know if we stepped the roof in the first building, but when we like to look, we like the massing to step it down. So that was sort of something we were working on.
Yeah, I think initially we were going to treat it as a 4-story, 5-story, 5-story, and then come back down on the north site. But from a design point of view, it became attractive to split those buildings in half, the two end buildings in half, keep them at 4, bump them up to 5 in the middle, so there was a progression. That also gave us the opportunity to develop that outdoor rooftop amenity at the north. There was some discrepancy at the zoning phase as to what we represented, and we felt there was room to take that half-story from the north building and put it on building number 1 at the left. Keep the same FSR, change the character of the profile of the elevation, and didn't feel that would significantly impact the neighbor to our south. We'd be interested in your take on that and your support or non-support of that. I think Scott showed how the north face of that building is really just a few small windows and exit doors. That building is only partially affected by that 5 stories that you see on the bottom. And that building is already significantly above the level of the house. We didn't think there was going to be a significant impact. So that's kind of a discussion we're having with planning, and
the other thing I'll just add is that it's been a project that's been going on for decades. So our bylaw has changed over those periods. So when they came through, there was a larger rezoning that was applied for, and it came back to the council. That council had asked them to go back and do more research and studies as to a Manicouagan blind channel study. And so we did that first, and then it came through again. And I think the concept of it has always kind of been this, but what had happened as well is that that northern little piece right near where the roundabout is, they had not acquired that. So when they acquired that in 2017, 16, they came through for another rezoning. So it allowed planning to also look at what they had secured and change it up to today's bylaws and make sure that it was relevant and that it still held true. The other, I think, piece of this was that we did secure that commercial component, where before it had said that there'd be a commercial component, but it wasn't really locked in any way. So there, at the time, the commercial was concerned, and then when it came through to rezoning, it was something that that particular council wanted to see at the time. So that's a little bit more of the history, but I mean, I think you've always kind of had this vision.
Generally, the idea of the townhouses lining the street and the taller the back from day one might have shuffled the gaps a little bit, and looking where the firewall goes. Those steps occur at firewalls because the buildings are, again, trying to meet the building code with the 6-story buildings and all of that stuff. So
I think to answer your question, essentially we are in conformity with all the zoning intentions right at the beginning, except for this slight relocation of mass. Otherwise, it's pretty much what we foresaw. We developed the materials and the detailing and the design much more. We've evolved all that, but essentially it's what it was at the design.
Okay, That's great. My next question for you is you kind of brushed over it a little bit, but can you maybe just share with us the details of the foreshore ownership? And so I think typically there would be some foreshore plans maybe included in an application like a DP, but I imagine there's some land ownership, water ownership.
We've been talking to the municipality and we're trying to figure out how to write an agreement. Maybe Phil, can you go to that? Yeah, so you'll see there's a straight line. If you just go off the shore, there's a straight line and there's quite a tight corner there, right there. So that's the part where ideally we would like to just slope into the channel. And Peter can talk a little bit about there's some riparian planning that's Peter's working together with our consultant working on that. That corner, at the moment, we have to treat it like a retaining wall because it's crown owned, but it's a lot. So it's different than encroaching on. We can't. It's a different kind of encroachment. So until we have permission, which we're working on, and we're sort of trying to work an agreement that says, if this is the worst case scenario. If we get permission, we'll make it better, kind of thing. And that's really what we're working on, right at that corner. That's the tough part.
For the most part, though, we have the road along Scott Crescent. There's the road. There's the combined pedestrian bicycle path, and then we taper at a 3 to 3.5.
We have a rock retaining wall, which gives us about a 2-foot grade difference. It gives us a defined edge, and then it just slopes down to the blind. The blind is tied, obviously, so the planting is that whole transition zone.
So it's kind of a gentle slope into the water.
Is it 3 to 1?
Yeah, I think it's 3 to 1.
3.5.
Yeah, and I think we were talking about using a boulder scattered in it to get it.
Well, right at the top, that's where we're going to use the boulder, and that's where the idea is to also have, and we're working again with staff on finding a fence detail that keeps the dogs out of that transition zone because it's fairly sensitive, so we have to keep the critters out of there, or our critters, not the other critters. So that's how that's.
Just so this panel is aware, the land development agreement secures them to having a standard of green shores, so trying to achieve that side, so it's not going to be the sheep pile kind of dike style. So if you do have comments regarding that.
And then last one for you. Did you explore like impacts of the tall buildings and then north facing aspect of the building? So casting shadows on the playground and the townhomes and that whole area. Is there any thought given to materials or to how you can kind of mitigate the darkness of that?
Well, but again, north is kind of that way, so most of that shadow is coming over the townhouses. So I don't know that we're really throwing our shadows more into the forest, I would say. And I'm not too worried about that.
The western sun comes in.
You're going to have good afternoon sun in space, for sure.
Right.
And the morning sun's not bad. Yeah, a low noon sun in the middle of winter, but it's not sunny typically. Anyway.
The chief gets in the way of that a little bit.
Yeah, so, but definitely, high sun angle will still give that courtyard quite a bit of sunlight.
And then Peter's going to plant it all with trees and make shades. But that is kind of the idea. We want it to have a bit of a forest character to it, so that it feels a little wild. Yeah.
For me.
May I think we just have the material board?
Oh, sure.
We're hiding.
Yeah, watch that. I think that rock's loose, so just be careful with it. That is a grizzly granite from the local quarry, and that's the stone project.
Great, thanks for the presentation. I guess my first question is kind of for planning, almost maybe more than you guys. Just that when you guys come in to do a presentation, do you give them like what we're supposed to be giving our opinion on? Like, have they seen these?
So when the report gets published, they have full access to it. So it's a week in advance,
Right.
or roughly a week in advance that they get that.
Okay. And I'm just asked because one of the main things was the commercial frontage located on Highway 99. And the only place that I was able to find any sort of view of that was on building 1 elevations, page 20. And I found it really challenging to kind of see, is there anywhere else I can get
We'll pull up the SketchUp
a view of what that actually looks like?
Oh, there's no SketchUp on the computer. Oh.
There are renderings here.
I'm looking from the street.
So, well, there's two components. So the one commercial question was just around how that space feels, and if we do want differentiation from the residential or for the commercial, or any comments that this panel had around that. And the second one was around the highway and that relationship to it. I know that, yeah, one of the issues is that
Where? The doors?
their electronic files do have a lot more detail. And unfortunately, because our systems, we can't put large files on there, it's hard to see those details as well on that as well. So, they give this package at the same time that report gets put out. So just to also understand that as well. So yeah, they don't really get too much heads up around this. And the intention with this is really for panel to spark discussion around it. It's not say like a make or break for planning. It's just opportunity to, maybe these are areas that could be bolstered, and would love your opinions on how to do that.
Okay, so then on that, I guess my question would be, is there consideration to maybe, and this might have actually already been asked, but change the color of the commercial facade from the street if we're looking for, if the amount of people that are living in this area isn't enough to support that much commercial space and we need to attract a bunch of people off the highway to come in here, is there any way of thought of differentiating what that commercial space looks like from the street? Is it going to be signage? Is it going to be a different color than the building? Or?
We weren't looking at it as a different color. We do have signage right on we're proposing a signage piece right like a monument type of sign right on the corner. Yeah, pylon, that's what I was looking. Thanks, Kerry. I was looking at that. We also have quite a bit of, the idea is if we can get that use that we're looking for, there'll be a lot of glass facing that. But, so the idea was to create that. Plus, the end of the building is pulled back and is really a landscape berm. So what you will see is that the only piece that will be fairly prominent will be that. You'll see this tall end of the building, but then you'll see this long horizontal plane, which will be the commercial. So we hadn't, and we were going to put a little color into some steelwork and stuff over the patio for the colors. But we hadn't, again, we were, until we have a tenant, it would, it'll be custom designed for that tenant as we get closer to that. And we may have to come back and do a little modification to the DP at that time. But right now we're trying to do DP for the whole site. And if we have to do a small modification, we don't know when that's going to happen, right? It's very market dependent. Well, we're hoping for it to happen fairly quickly.
We also felt that when looking at it in elevation, it's easy to think of the materials and the materiality of the retail in the same way as the background building because they're represented similarly. But I think we will, one thing we envision if it was a brew tub, we'd have big stainless tanks that would be open to windows on the highway. So you'd be looking into windows, that the patios would be animated with umbrellas, that the windows would, have awnings with logos, that there would be all kinds of other cues and elements just by virtue of it being retail that would give it more of a distinct character rather than just changing material.
So there'd be enough other features that aren't necessarily to do with the exterior facade of the building.
Yeah, we have. It is part of the plinth, and the plinth has a lot of the stonework in it. So the idea was where you're close to the building, we wanted to use that quality material. So again, it's mostly prominent in the amenity area and in the commercial area. So that was the idea. Let's use that more robust material in those locations.
Cool. Gotcha. I think you guys have answered my questions on that one.
Okay, good.
When we were going through it originally, you guys had mentioned something about a courtyard for kids and family that was going to kind of be like a unstructured, flexible space. Where was that exactly? Was that the main one in the middle with the
Yes.
fire? Oh, that was that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the one, the adult space, and the kids' space was the one at the top of the courtyard.
Right.
There's some indoor, outdoor space related with that, and the kids play, and great tables and barbecues and things like that, so it is quite family.
And then I think I only have one other one was, I think Graham touched on it just briefly. I didn't really catch the answer to it. It was like, under the sustainability, there's applying a recognizable sustainable strategies framework with agreed targets. What is the agreed targets? Like, is that something that we set now or something that we communicate later?
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I just feel like
Green targets, the green targets.
The green targets.
Have we set them?
We haven't set.
No.
There's been no talk about it beyond step 3.
Right, so step 3 is the agreed target.
Step 3, as far as we know, is the agreed target.
Gotcha.
So did we do something to your system that's a problem?
Yeah.
We took the HDMI connection to put, because there was no SketchUp on that.
So there's nothing, nothing going on the screen.
So if you can.
Sorry for the
you'll-
technical.
Yeah.
When we put that back, we had hoped to show you that
SketchUp
elevation.
model.
of the
If you
SketchUp.
do have a USB to plug into that, but that's
We
the
don't
only
have
way.
the SketchUp program.
Yeah, the problem was we thought the SketchUp program was loaded on your computer, we realized it wasn't there.
So step 3 had been, I mean, we've been working on this since before the step code was invented even. Step 3 has been a significant bump from step 2. It has caused us to reconsider window sizes and wall assemblies. So step 3 by itself is a significant target.
I mean, to meet step 3, we know we need to use heat recovery ventilation, which we've done. We know we need to use probably a slightly upgraded glazing spec on the glass. And we are going to be increasing the insulation on the walls, whether it's a 2x8. I mean, what we're being asked to use right now is a 2x8 insulated 2x8 wall. That's kind of what we're doing. We have, though, taken a bit of our passive house knowledge in terms of thermal bridging, and in the parkade, we've done some over-insulating and extending insulation paths to try to eliminate those kind of cold spots. So we've taken some of our knowledge and how we would deal with those and brought them at a lower level into this building for those kinds of things. We do think it'll be a pretty comfortable building, but it does have, reasonably large pieces of glass. I mean, everybody wants to have this fantastic view, and this nature piece of Squamish to be very much a part of the building. Yeah.
Great, that's it for me.
Okay, there's a lot here. Just for Kerry, I'm wondering about the review comments, needs further review in some of the areas. Are you looking for us to speak to those, or it just hasn't been looked at?
Yeah, sometimes like when these projects come forward, there's a few other missing pieces like signage and lighting that we don't currently have right now. It's still our practice to bring this forward. So some of those comments are regarding that. Others may need further review, as in the question. We have a lot of DP guidelines now, and so the question may still need to be resolved prior to going to council. Some of them do specifically say for ADP's consideration.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it is,
yeah.
and so that's, I would definitely appreciate your comments on those.
Okay, and is there a pedestrian connection from this site or side of the highway across to Mags or whatever it is cheapest? Is there, like, can you get across the highway anywhere there?
No.
No. There's nothing proposed?
Other than there'll be the Clark Drive intersection with Highway 99 with the new waterfront landing that's coming on that side. There'll be a crossover at that intersection. But it really, I don't believe there's a sidewalk even that goes down to Mags.
Yeah, we'll speak to that a little bit.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to mention that the Canada Trail does come to the front of our site. So you can get to the Clark Drive intersection and to the Cleveland intersection via the bridge or around the channel and crossing our new pedestrian bridge.
Right.
You can get to those two intersections, but there's nothing right at Clark.
Not for the Sunny Chicas.
Yeah, it's just the development behind there would be nice if they could speak to each other somehow and support the commercial a little bit there.
One of the problems is the bridge is too low.
Right.
So we can't go underneath it. And we literally talked about how we could go underneath it with almost like a below water tide level walkway that was kind of like a boat. We've actually looked at that.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily off the table. There's some desire to see if we can figure out how to do it. But, you know, between trying to deal with the bridge itself and Ministry of Highways, and it's a big, big deal.
Okay, so there is it's a longer connection, but if you were to take the pedestrian bridge through Rose Park, underneath the bridge, it actually brings you up to, it's informal access up to that highway. We are still trying to work with highways to get that access. And then there's a sidewalk that gets you to Meigs. So,
okay. Okay, and then, so commercial and amenity, I understand the site plan and how it relates to phase 2 for the amenity. It's sort of, you know, central within the two developments. So looking forward, I can see how that would make sense. Have you considered flipping the two? Having amenity, you know, on the highway and the commercial sort of more within the development to support the future build out a bit more?
That's where we started, and Red Point in this original incarnation had the amenity at the north end of the site.
Yeah.
We did feel the highway exposure was important for the commercial component. We also see that commercial component as being related to the larger community, so that cars that would come from Valley Cliff or Hospital Hill, come down Scott Crescent, would pull in at the highway to, you know, stop off for coffee or vice versa on the way in. They would pull off the highway into the commercial. So we thought the relationship of the highway to the commercial was important, rather than bringing that element kind of into the middle of the site. It might be a little noisier or boisterous if it's a group highway.
Okay. Yeah, it's and then what about the townhouse block? Was there any opportunity? I can see it's, you know, tight for fire access, but any, did you look at splitting those so it's not such a big facade on that, you know, pedestrian scale, right? It is in height, but in wall length, I see it undulates a little bit, but it's...
Well, I mean, that was what we were trying to do, was to undulate it for that reason. I mean, you'd split it by just losing it. That's how you feel.
I mean, there's how many units? Like one unit is...
Nonetheless, that's right. We actually did eliminate, we had one more unit in there. We did eliminate one already for other reasons. We thought that it was getting too tight, but that's really all it is. And, you know, you could put a little path up the middle, but we do have paths at either end. It's quite well connected. We felt it was acceptable, and that's why we did this. We did want it on this, that was the fun part.
Okay, and then the trees against the commercial, what are those? Along the highway?
Oh, I'd have to look at it.
Okay, so is the intent that they're screening the commercial?
No,
it looks like there's a bit of a berm, I'm not really sure.
There's a bit of a berm in there. It's more from, you know, from the trail system and such. So we have the highway, a little bit of planting, almost street tree like, a little bit like Bay, right when you have those straight little trees, the maples that are in there, something similar to that.
Okay. Okay. No, those are my questions.
In relation to the commercial building, you talk about putting potentially a group hub in there with lots of storage tanks, etc. Have you addressed the issue of large delivery trucks or delivery trucks in a loading dock bay and that? I don't see that on the plan, but, and also the load bearing floors. Is that a one level or a two level building?
It's a one level building, so it's right on grade, so there won't be any, and the parking lot is right on grade. In terms of delivery, we have a loading dock see that little brown area? Oh, there, oh, there you go. So it doesn't show up there, but it's showing where the loading dock is. It's, you got the mouse there?
Yeah,
Oh, there you go.
it's right here.
Yeah, right there. So that's a loading dock right there. So the idea was that the trucks could fairly easily pull into that dock, and that's actually also where we access the garbage from the residential portion of the building. And then we've been talking about reserving one of the stalls up in the corner there for like an Amazon truck or that kind of thing, because that's going to be, that orange lobby area there is one of our mail areas. So one of those parking stalls, we're showing 2 disability stalls there right now, but we will likely put some kind of we'll maybe create one more disability stall or something, but we will put in probably some kind of a reserve stall for a smaller delivery vehicle there.
Can we get an overheight stall there?
Overhead stall where?
An overheight parking stall in that?
All of them are there, they're surfaced. So
could we get one for the developer?
I mean, they're all overhead. Which is designated.
All of the ones?
Yeah. Are you talking about the underground parking or surface?
No, underground. In the
that's tricky.
Delivery area.
No, that's tricky. That's tricky because you've got 2 levels of parking there, so you'd have to lose. Well, it cuts into the kids' play area at that point. So we're under the kids' play area.
And are the townhouses, so all the apartment buildings are rentals?
No. Everything's ownership. There's no rentals.
So it's condo?
It's all condo.
Okay, because it says apartment in this comment.
Well, okay, so to me, condo is a form of ownership, apartment is a physical form. That's the way I look at it.
Okay, because we're talking about affordable housing and enough housing in this whole.
It's a very difficult question in all of these.
Yeah, so that's why, so then everything will be strata?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of the facade from the highway, will it be lit up at night? Will the building be lit? Will it be low lit, high lit?
We would expect the commercial would be lit all night long. I don't think you would want to particularly light the residential facade, other than, if somebody has their light on the
for
balcony or
access,
something like that.
Yeah.
But I can't see why one would light that. I love lit up landscape, but I don't know that it's totally appropriate.
No, that's hence my question, because I realize there's a commercial element that you want lit up.
I think you
but
want
you don't
that.
want everything else lit up like a fully commercial space.
No, I don't think you want to do that.
Okay, and then you've obviously considered public art at the north end on the bridge.
Part of our development agreement is to provide public art, but it's one of the later phases. So there's a very, very high infrastructure cost at the beginning of this project. Building a bridge, building all these roads, it's very, very high. So we asked to negotiate some of those easier to delay pieces to later phases. So that's what's been done as part of the development.
Okay, I'm just wondering if that's been considered for the first phase, because you're going to open that first.
No, the first phase, yeah, and in fact, when we talk about the first phase, it'll probably be built in at least 3 phases, because the market isn't what it was, and so we're pretty certain we're going to build the first building, we call it building 3, which is the building with the amenity attached. That would be the first construction. And originally we were going to start at the other end. We were actually building the highway building with the retail was originally the first start, but the decision's been to build that one first, and then we'll build the middle one, and then we'll build the highway building. And I'm not quite sure when we'll build the townhouses. It could be part of the middle one, it could be part of phase 2 or part of phase 3.
Thank you.
Most of my questions have been answered. Happens when you're near the end. But back on the subject of sustainability, I was just hoping to hear about rainwater management and water management in general, and if there has been consideration on that, consideration on potential cistern and water reuse, etc.
We talk a lot about water reuse, and it's usually in the context of landscape needs. And certainly we're doing it on some other buildings in the North Shore, but it's kind of funny because when the tank is empty is when you want it. You haven't had rain all summer, and now it's difficult with these large systems. In terms of what we are doing, is because we're on the Champlain Channel, we're not putting a load on the city's stormwater system, but we will have two grease oil separator units, so that one for off-site work and one for on-site, that will separate the oils and the pollutants out of the water before it's discharged into the channel. So that is something we have been talking about. At the moment, we have not had any discussions about retaining any water for use in the project.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
This loading stall, is it the only one?
Yes, it's really intended for the commercial. We're assuming that for residential move-in, we would then allow those trucks up that center driveway. Well, yeah, that's right. There's one small one by the amenity as well. There is. There's one right there. I'm sorry. We put that one in for the Amazon delivery, the Canada Post second.
Yeah.
Or the caterer or something like that.
Yeah, with that many units, you're going to have at least a move in, move out every weekend of the year.
Yes.
So,
so we would expect when that happens, we would be able to use that center drive for that.
And the access from there to an elevator is clearly works.
It's pretty direct, yeah. You're direct from that drive. You can get into an elevator and the building.
Okay. I know you show the commercial parking area in that little courtyard at the front. Have you thought at all about other commercial stalls, overflow, a use that needs more stalls, and also where do visitors park in general?
So that's only part of the commercial parking. There is, where we had that loading dock, you go into the underground parkade. There's a section of the parkade there that's reserved for both visitors and commercial.
Okay.
Okay. So there's a portion of it there, and you'll see some gates where you'll see that there's a gates further down. Go further down, Joe. There's a gates on either side there.
Yeah.
Those stalls are all commercial related in there, or visitor.
Just in that little zone or further?
Mostly that little zone. It's more for, it meets the commercial requirements and part of the visitor requirements.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have visitor parking also up in this area. So that area there is all visitor parking. We've related it to our amenity building. So we've split it between the two.
Okay.
And there may be some management, we may move those gates a little bit. We haven't kind of finalized exactly where we're going to put them. But that's the general intent. That we'll have one node there and one node at the top.
Yeah. I know you're well over your parking requirements, so there's room for juggling there, I guess, if you need to do in the future.
Yes. There is certainly some concern of the realtors to make sure there's enough parking for the real estate side. So we've always felt that we would have a little more parking, but also the next site might be a little short on parking. Some of these might actually serve, some of that visitor might serve the site across the street or things like that.
Okay. Yeah. Just a couple small things on the commercial. Had you considered some doorways into the parkade from the back of the commercial stalls, particularly if you have a brew pub for a kitchen?
We could certainly do that. It's a good idea, actually. We could certainly have a look at that. I guess it's been in the back of my mind, but it wasn't a high priority.
Not impossible.
Yeah.
And then also on that same vein, you're going to need a riser for a hood vent, and then I noticed that there's a rooftop at the level 1 above that particular commercial area. How is that rooftop treated? Because you'll be overlooking it and all there is.
It's a green roof. So if you look at the landscape plan, you'll see both of those commercial flat. We're going to build them flat. We're going to build them on concrete, and we're going to put a low maintenance green roof on it, but at least so it's visually appealing.
Yeah. Okay.
And then that would allow you to put a vent there.
Fenced and whatnot. Yeah. The only other thing is, as far as public amenities, not just for the people living here. Aside from the bridge, and then I see another little dock that juts out on one of your images there. Is there anything else that's purely public that
there is
being brought forward?
On the north side, there is a 15-meter public park dedication that's part of
Yeah, It's really that whole linear piece that would connect. That's all dedicated land for a public park.
Okay.
So that becomes a public park, and that gets triggered by the zoning even if we don't reach that phase. After 5 years, the municipality acquires that public dedication. And then that's where the artwork was going to be incorporated as well.
I see. And the timing for that is the same as the bridge, or?
No, the timing for the bridge it's complicated, but the timing for the bridge is the occupancy of the first phase. So the municipality gets the bridge when we get our first phase. The park gets dedicated 5 years from last October.
It's messy, but the
Yeah.
land development agreement secures a comprehensive amenity package. One side of the amenity package is just service work, so there's a lot of road infrastructure upgrades that are happening, not just in this area, but up Clark Drive, up along, like all the way to the highway. So there are upgrades to all of that as part of the package. And then there's another layer of amenities. It includes car share, it includes the bridge, it includes money towards trail infrastructure to upgrade the connection, the existing connection to Hospital Hill and Valley Cliff, which is just close to that roundabout, basically, I guess, east of that. This is just off the top of my head, but there's a number of them, and they get triggered at different phases of the development.
Okay. But it's considered that if the bridge comes in before the first unit on the south side, there will be a connection there that will survive any future construction.
Yeah, so what we did with them, there's currently on that the north site currently has a show home, like a show center, and through that temporary use permit where they did that work, we actually secured that there would be access up to the existing trail network that will connect into that bridge.
Okay.
So in the interim of construction, it is understood that there will still be a connection through.
It's a challenge, but it's the right thing to do. So
Yeah.
we're working on that.
Okay.
Then the town gets trails, great connectivity, a bridge, a bit of a public park, the kayak launch, some parking, just, the fact that you can park and use these facilities, and then there's water and sewer upgrades and a lot of road upgrades. So there's quite a big package. It's very heavily front-end loaded, this project. The development ain't making any money in the first phase, I can tell you that.
Yeah, it's just hard to pick up on sometimes, so it's good that we go through it.
Yeah, and most of that was part of the rezoning rather than part of the development permit.
Yeah, okay. Do you have a few more questions?
Just if I may. What is the number of units?
400 and...
Total, but in this phase.
Yes.
In this phase, it's 144 one bed, 145 two beds, and 26 three beds.
144?
144 ones, 145 twos, and 26 threes.
And the total is 300.
Oh, I've got it.
I think it's 315.
Yeah, I think it's 315. That's the right number.
It says 291 in the package. Residential units.
Yeah.
Is it?
On page 4.
Does that include the townhouses?
315 on this site, this portion.
It just says here too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's because we changed, right? We added, so there was a change that was not part of the original application that wanted to rethink the ends of the buildings and have an extra suite. So there's been a little marketing change. So all of these, they are part of this package, but they'll have to be updated in the official package.
Actually, that brings me next question. Is there any relationship between the north side and the south side except for the bridge and parking? Anything else? Or why did you mention it here?
They will share the amenity. They are part of the whole, like the same rezoning looked after both sites together. The agreements, the development agreements consider both sites together.
So this amenity will serve the next north side
It will serve. Now we're going to add a bit of an amenity as well as some small amenity on the other site as well. But this center is available to both sides.
Anything else?
Well, I mean, when you think about it, I've always thought of the commercial as an amenity, quite honestly. If we can make it, my biggest concern is that it be viable.
Right.
But if we could keep it viable, it would be just a wonderful place for go down and have a coffee and meet your neighbor, or go to the brew pub and have a drink after work or after a bike ride. So if we can make that happen, or even just go down and see a chiropractor or whatever it might be, if we can make that part of the community, that would be ideal. And I think once you get to this kind of number of suites, we have a chance. And it is a concern of us, but it was also a requirement, so we're working to, how do we make it as viable as possible?
All right. And how many number of parkings of 390 is for the commercial?
Whatever the commercial requirement was, I don't have that breakdown.
There is, I do have it listed, and it wasn't in the upgraded package. Obviously, we will be working together with amendments, but there's a parking list that I'm going to require to see the bedrooms and make sure that it's, you know, all compliant to the zoning that way. So it's just unfortunately not part of this package, but it is definitely the details that we will be triple checking on.
The zoning requires 2.5 cars per 100 square meters.
Yeah.
So I think it's 25 stalls.
Something like that.
And it doesn't fall under
25, that's what it would be then.
Sorry. It doesn't fall under downtown zoning parking, just so you're aware. It's got its own parking in the zone. Yeah.
So these 32 tandem parking are part of the calculation?
Yeah, they're part of that calculation. What we see those as functioning, it's somebody who's got maybe a small tent trailer they want to keep there or something like that. So they are parking stalls. We might have 2 cars, but those will be sold to one unit, right? So they'll get a tandem deep stall, whether you put 2 cars in it, or a car and a boat in it, or trailer full of bikes in it, whatever you want to do, that'll be up to you, but it's a tandem stall that is sold. We saw an opportunity to do that, and we thought it would be useful for certain owners. Sure.
That's part of the 400.
It would be, yes.
And what's the roughly length of the building 1?
Length of building 1.
Just rough.
Oh man, I'd have to go find the dimensions.
It seems to be a unit about 22 feet, or
depending
on the back.
Yeah, the 1 bedrooms are about
So it's about
22.
230 feet?
Yeah.
Or more?
Building 1.
Yeah, building 1.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It should be about 250.
Yeah.
About 15 times 22.
That's over 300.
I didn't bring a
Okay,
scale.
that's fine.
Sorry, I don't have that.
That's fine. That's
right
fine.
off the top of it.
One other thing, do you think the trees can be retained during construction at the east of the building tree, as you have mentioned?
There are, yes, we have committed to keep as many trees on the escarpment as we can. The issue is grading of the trail and matching the grading of the trail to not damage the root zones.
Right.
So we may have to put some steps in the trail, so the issue will be, do we keep the trees and expose a bit of the concrete wall on the parkade in order to let the trail go low and keep the trees, or are we better to bring the grading up and we'll lose the trees, we'll replant them and have the trail a little higher on the backside and have a lower wall? That's our little dilemma that we've been working through on that piece.
That's fine. Just mentioning because it says all along these retained trees. And
We're retaining quite a few trees in the back. It's along this back corner here, and there's a couple of zones where we've identified some trees we can retain.
We draw some cross sections here so you start getting an idea of how those things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good for questions. I'd like to move to comments, and I know Tanis would like to make some comments because she has to leave quickly after.
So I think generally I really appreciate the presentation. You guys were pretty thorough, and there's a lot here. It's a really large development. There's a lot of finite detail in the landscaping. So I do appreciate that. I think the comments that I have are centered around the commercial space on the highway. and then the location of the amenity, and I kind of go back and forth. I understand your reasoning, and I would probably do it too, but then I wonder about if the commercial space on the highway is, I mean, you're showing seating out there, is that going to be somewhere where people are going to want to sit with a 4-lane highway, right? And it's busy. So I wonder about that. You know, you don't want to screen it because you're trying to, you know, get that activity happening on the street. Yeah, so I don't know how to make that work, but it's definitely something that I would have concern about. And then coming down the highway on that corner, the first building has its back to one of the, it's in my opinion, the entry into Squamish. Once you pass Clark, that's sort of like, and you arrive, and your back is to it. So I can see your setback kind of, the property line kind of kinks up that way. Maybe you can rotate the building, I don't know, maybe the commercial gets rotated a little bit just so when you're coming down the hill it grabs you a little bit more. And then I would definitely work on some roof lines. You've got this pretty cool glue lamp system with the sloping roof in the amenity space. Maybe translating that, you know, architectural language over to the commercial space would sort of help that soffit maybe could glow, you know, like it could be really welcoming for people coming into town. I think the townhouse, even though they do have that bit of a curve, I would maybe try to break them up a little bit more. It's a very long wall for pedestrian scale. And I noticed that they're just, they go all the same way. So maybe halfway you flip the unit so that there's some visual distinction between, what is there, 14 or, okay. Quite a few. Quite a few.
So if you split it 6 and 6.
And then just on the bigger buildings, because they're very big, they're up 6 stories on the parkade, right?
Well, no, the parkade forms the first 2.
Yeah, that's, sorry, so just in a mass, they're reading as, yeah. So I would really encourage a little bit more articulation because they just look like boxes. And there's not really any variation between them except for the color palette, which is very muted anyhow. So maybe some playful roof lines on a few of them, just to punch it up a little bit. I don't think you have to change your entire roof line, but just something that celebrates it a little bit more, you know, gives it that you want to enter it instead of just being this big box. And then just my final comment on materials, I think revisiting the palette, it's very muted. I don't mind it if it's maybe one building, but all these buildings are basically the same. And then there's not a lot of variation between the 4. So speaking to a development, it has the same sort of typology, and the coloring I think is a good architectural move, but I think there has to be some variation when it's at this scale, right? Like 400 plus units is a lot to be all the same. I think that's all. But I'm excited for this. You've done a thoughtful site plan. I think it works well.
Thanks, Dennis. Shall we continue closing?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's a very, very complex project, and you've got a lot of questions about it because it is so complex and it's hard to communicate all that. And it's clear that you've thought about all those components in your answer for Elaine, and not just you really have thought about it. So I appreciate that. And it's a hugely diverse program and social program too, both landscape socially and architecturally socially. So I think it's very complex, and it's a very interesting project. I like some of the massing moves. The townhouses obviously make sense, and stepping down towards the water. The one-story step over the 3 big buildings is maybe a little lost, and maybe that's an opportunity to address the highway with maybe a slightly more aggressive move at that end. that's the one area that's quite unique for all these three buildings. So maybe I'd echo what you kind of put around the table, that maybe there's just something that has to happen on that west end. And it's probably more than just color, it's probably a massive move in my mind. Let's see. The elevations as they're presented are quite attractive to me. I think we're missing a little bit of detail. I think you've thought of it. It just isn't in the package yet. We didn't see any detailed wall sections or any detailed elevations. We've got a material palette, but it's really hard to see where that's happening. I was kind of excited to see the steel, the red pieces of steel, but they're actually really very sparsely used. And I see timber up on the roof. You know, maybe this is red bridge, right? It's a bridge. Use of steel might be really interesting versus rough timber up on a roof that's combustible, that's going to weather. So I think embrace the fact that it's kind of a gritty site down where steel works well. You know, and it kind of goes with the market of the project. The landscape is, again, also been very well thought out, Peter. What we're missing is a detailed landscape plan, and that you're getting there, and we haven't seen that, or did I miss that? I've been through it. I see a palette of plants, but I don't see a landscape plan, much like a building elevation plan. I mean, I guess you have to hunt and figure out what it is, or at least I'm missing that. So I know all the spaces have been carefully thought about, the spa spaces, all the entrances, the play spaces, so I think you're on the right path, and you guys, of course, will execute it beautifully. And then lastly, I think the package is really good. It missed a few interior details that it came out a little later, but again, we're forming character, so internal functions are important to be expressed, but they're not really the concern of this panel. And then lastly, I appreciate that you did a double-sided print, because we get a lot of one-sided print. So thank you very much. Good project.
I also thank you for good presentation, and that you could survive decades of design. Wonderful that you can do that. And there are very nice elements in the design. I really like a few things, but I think the number of units and the size, it needs more time for me at least to understand and comprehend and digest it. I think the sizes needs to be break a little bit more. If I were you, I would have made it smaller. I mean, you have tried to do that, but I think 300 feet, it's broken to 2, but still. It can be improved, but overall I think it's a good presentation and good conference together.
Yeah, I found the package a lot of information. I found it hard to find the answers to the questions being asked of us, and I guess some things have changed from the presentation. Apparently other things have changed, so I struggled with that, so I'm just going to dive into the building form massing, and there's some specific language in the DP guidelines about individual building identity should be reinforced to provide variety in the built environment. And I've watched the presentation, I've gone through the package, and I really don't see that. It looks like one idea that's kind of been repeated throughout 3 buildings and 300,000 square feet. And I just think, there needs to be more done about the identity of individual buildings. Sustainability, though, that's a bigger concern for me. I mean, really, I find it insulting that you come in with a project of this size and only proposing what's required of you. I mean, and then can't even answer the question about what your sustainable framework is. I mean, you've got a good team here who knows this sort of stuff, so let them do the work. It's a rapidly evolving world, and you gotta get up to speed with that, or you're gonna be out of date by the time you build this. And so I think we need to be thinking about that every day about this project. Comments?
Thanks.
Yeah, it's a lot to digest. understand. Yeah, I guess just to be able to be prepared to have some dedicated over height accessible parking. And yeah, I find that it feels a bit monotonous to me that there's the same colors virtually throughout the buildings. There needs to be a bit more distinction. I can't really give comments on the commercial area of the highway because it's not that clear to me. Yeah, I mean, I think that it will be good, but I think it needs
Yeah, similar comments going around in my head at the moment. Yeah, I think leveraging the site's industrial heritage, you know, I think you're doing that with the sales center right now. The more that can be amplified in the package, I think that'd be great, and it's meaningful to the community. It looks like a fresh take on the townhomes, and then maybe trying to pull some of those elements into the apartments, but maybe there's more that can be done there. How you go about that, it's up to you. And yeah, it'd be great to get more information on the foreshore. I know it's really complicated with that corner, and I totally understand there may be a need for a sheet pile wall there as an interim step, but even the water side of that step, understanding the planting, what's going on there, and from a sustainability standpoint, that might be a big opportunity to build in some additional habitat in that area, and aquatic habitat, which I think is quite important. That's all for me.
Yeah, it's massive, and it's more than I've ever sort of reviewed. So I spent a fair bit of time on it, and before we got here, and really focusing on the questions that the district was asking us. And I found it really hard to answer them. I think a lot of the information that pertains to these four aren't actually in this. I don't know if it was it seems like you guys have a whole bunch of it dealt with, but then it's not actually in the package. I found it a little challenging. I know one of the main ones is the play area. I didn't really see a ton about the play area before. And then the other one was just from the highway, trying to give an opinion on whether or not that should be reviewed. I think there's so much glazing there, and like you had mentioned, you're thinking about a brew pub or something. So I think maybe those elements will speak to that and deal with that, and we don't necessarily need to look at a way to outline the commercial area on the street, but I found it hard to sort of take a look at that based on the information that was in there. And then I think the other thing is just kind of what Graham was touching on is when I saw Cornerstone and being involved in the Passive House world a fair bit myself, I was kind of excited about what the sort of agreed targets and sustainable strategies were going to be, and then also just based on sort of our development permit area 3, one of the main things in there is improve energy and water conservation in the new development, and then I'm not sure we really saw much about how we're going to do that anywhere in the presentation. Because yeah, you guys obviously have the expertise, we all know that, so I think that's something that maybe should be brought to the table a little more on this development. Yeah, that's it for me.
From the commercial standpoint, I agree with Tanis that from a hospitality perspective, moving, and also artistic and aesthetic, moving the sort of the patio side where it's sitting right next to the highway, and that is a busy highway. Maybe to a more interior perspective, that would be helpful. But in terms of the color palette, and since you're going to sort of delay your public art, maybe using a different color palette to break up the facade so it has a more aesthetic appeal, not just to people driving on the highway, but to the residents there, so they don't feel like they're living in the Soviet bloc with bland colors. It would be very appealing if the color palette changed. And you can use your building form to be a public art space. So it would be lovely to see that. And also the play area can become a public art space. So I understand foregoing it for expenses, but you can use the spaces that you've already identified as public spaces to create public art.
So I echo a lot of comments said already. I'm just thinking about the entry into Squamish, and we've just left the Chiefs, and there's this really subtle blind and the smoke bluffs and the mountains above, and this to me feels extremely urban and very repetitive and quite out of context, unfortunately. It really reads like two buildings. There's one big C and then one rectangle, and I think it really should read like 8 or more buildings. They should, I think, really feel like they have their own forming character, their own articulation, and so it feels like a community that's kind of grown over time rather than something that's been, even if it is built in 2 phases, it can still feel like something that's been developed organically and have their own forming character. But right now I find it to be 2 buildings, and that kind of captures, you know, roof variation and the color palette, etc. I would echo Graham's comments and others with regards to sustainability. I think, you know, unfortunately we are going into a climate crisis, and I think, you know, water is a really precious resource and it rains a lot here. So there's a lot of opportunity for consideration for rainwater management on the surface, on cisterns for irrigation, for potential toilet use, etc. So I would have liked to have seen something like that in a development of this scale. I really appreciate Peter's sentiments on the riparian, and I'm glad to hear that Green Shores is going to be top of mind. That Crown Land property line is not going to be fun, so you seem to have a good grip on how to best resolve that, so that's good to hear. I would encourage keeping the trees as much as possible. We definitely don't want to cut down mature trees if we can help it. The landscape character overall, the drawings seem to evoke a really interesting character with the use of quite kind of Squamish looking look and feel, lots of boulders, which is pretty cool. But on that note with the play, I would hope that the play would be a very robust, very designed, programmed amenity rather than more of a natural play, because I think the landscape itself with that you've created actually creates that character already, that the kiddos can kind of just find that love within the landscape itself, and then when they go to play, it's to play. So I would encourage that. And then also just ensuring there is a shadow study because the public amenity is quite limited for the residents. Just to double check that where we have those usable spaces that it is nice and sunny. I think the mini spa is pretty neat. And the amenity building in general, it's nice to see a lot of opportunity for the community to kind of come home for work and be able to go to the gym, into the spa and such like that. So I think that's a positive thing. And that's my comments. Thanks.
Thanks. Where do I start? I think,
Sorry.
Okay. Thanks. You're still there. We're still 5, yeah. Thanks, Sarah. I feel like there is so much here and so much of it is really good stuff, but it's not quite, in my opinion, far enough developed for ADP to fully, and especially with some of these recent comments that are coming out where suggestions of color variation, I totally agree with that, design variation, massing towards the highway that could be improved. There's a lot of things that could be probably worked on a little bit more and brought back. We'll vote on that, but that's just my feeling. It might benefit both parties here. There's things that we're missing so much, like if we're going to comment towards what it looks like from the highway, it'd be nice to get a rendering from the other side of the highway looking at what you're going to see rather than just the cross-section of the building on that side. Same for the commercial front. Would be great to see that from the street, what it looks like if you're driving up. And I mean, on that note, there's I didn't see a signage plan in there. I don't know what kind of signage you're going to suggest, how that might benefit the realization that it is commercial rather than residential. On the commercial outlook to the highway, I actually think that it's okay to have an active front along the highway there. I know it's not going to be as fantastic for the patrons of, let's say, a brew pub or something like that, but if you're driving by and you see that activity and the lights and the patio, it's actually there is a benefit there, and you're also sheltering the residents from that potential noise of someone partying out there or something. But that's very specific to a brew pub. So you might end up with something totally different in there, and then it won't matter at all. So at any rate, I kind of think that you're good with the way that you've done the commercial there, and that's my background. So I think that's where I'm going to end right now on my comments. So just reiterating and agreeing with everyone else. So if are there any other comments that anyone wants to make?
I just have a quick comment, and I guess I'm sure there's going to be frustration if there was documents that were submitted that didn't make it to us. And I guess it's my request to you, Kerry, to champion us getting some sort of, like, Dropbox exists. We can use that. We all use that in our work. Like, there's a way to put this all on a non-compressed, multiple megabyte PDF so that we can actually view it and fly around. I think that will cause a lot less stress for everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, just so everyone's aware, I have 2 notes to take from this. One is that Sarah Digger, who organizes this committee, just to let everyone know that we have a large project coming and to just anticipate a little bit more review time with that, because I'm hearing there's a lot to review. The other piece is that for our larger projects that we have had to condense the document in order to put it onto an electronic file, and it was surprised to me that it wasn't all in this package, unfortunately, which is just a miss in terms of for this particular ABP. It's not usually how things go. Everything that's on the electronic files is usually presented. The electronic files had a lot more detail, had a full landscape plan, as well as a few more sections for the architectural sections. So that's something that this team can work from. We'll make sure to double check to make sure that everything is in the package. And then I agree, Carlos, I'm happy to bring that suggestion to Legislative Services and see what we can do to help that, because condensing them is not really great for you guys if you are trying to look at those details. Thanks.
So I'll quickly go through our options for how we resolve this. One, potential recommendation A is that the advisory design panel supports the project and does not need to see this project returned for further review. Option B is that the advisory design panel supports the project in general and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the following recommendations, of which we supply a list. Option C is that the advisory design panel supports the project in general and would like the applicant to resolve specific recommendations and return to present revised project again. And option D is that the advisory design panel does not support the project for the following reasons. Discussion on a potential option for a decision. In general, C is on the table.
Comments that we could put on this.
Yeah.
Is that a, throwing that?
I'm sorry, like movement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I can,
Sure.
yeah,
There's
there's discussion right now, yeah. Okay, well, we are moving for C and
Might I ask a question?
Mhm.
When, if it did come back for review, when would that be?
that's something you'd have to resolve with the planning staff. Yeah. Yeah. Unless there's a real drive to have this stay with planning, we'll go for C at this time.
There's a lot for them to work with and talk with staff, so I think we should see it again.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, let's vote. So we have second for option C. All in favor? Against? Option C it is. Unfortunately, we'll have to see you again. But we're very encouraged with what we see and excited about some of the comments that we've made and that those would be addressed. You need any?
Just wondering if you normally pin or bullet point the options you want them to address?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
We usually do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Well, I've summarized some of the main ones that I heard as we went around the table. One is from Tanis, the color variation from building to building. I thought that was a pretty major one. Design variation came from a few people, building to building, and some articulation in the roof level and the mast, and in favor of how it looks from the highway in particular. There was your comment, which I thought was very good about it not being quite a place for Squamish, and
Yeah,
reiterate that one.
I was speaking to making the buildings breaking it into 8 buildings and making them all feel that they have their own form and character. Even if it's developed at one go, it can still feel like it grew organically, and they all have a different kind of feel.
Some more differentiation.
More differentiating, breaking up maybe pretty specific, but maybe individuality and expression of an identity in the building.
It can physically be one building, but it could read as...
Yeah, that's one of my comments about identity.
Yeah.
And then the industrial nature of the site and kind of bringing more of that into what we see, which is, I agree with Tanis, it's more of an urban sort of design outside of what we would like in Squamish. Sustainability, conservation measures. A signage plan would be great. We could go on.
I would caution, and just on the comment about color change from building to building, I think it's a beautifully composed set of buildings, and I would hate to see 8 different looking buildings. And so I would kind of disagree with some of that direction there. I think they need to review, from my perspective, some subtle changes in that, but I wouldn't want to see 8 different buildings and 8 different color schemes.
I agree.
Oh, no.
I agree.
I don't think it's swing the pendulum to the other side, but just like have a bit more of a
As long as the applicant understands.
No great
It's not
swings.
necessarily a whole redesign of the building. Components.
Just a bit more distinction.
12 townhouses all the same. That's there.
And any other important points that out of...
It would be good to get an idea of some details around the foreshore. Unless it's outside the scope of, typically it's in a landscape plan.
There are environmental drawings that are done.
Okay.
You just have to show them.
That's great. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Anything from us that may be confusing?
Oh, there was one. It was the lining of the townhouses to break that pedestrian walkway up. That was Tanis's one, and I agree with
Yeah, it's interesting, we had challenged ourselves with some older colors at one time, and we got talked out of it. So,
oh dear.
We'll have to go rethink some of those things. As far as the sustainability strategy, and we started out as a code-built standard building, and all of a sudden it's step 3, and we kind of got there. That's supposed to be a little bit more. So we're nowhere near that. But like I said, we were trying to. I've started the discussion about energy switching, but we've got marketing that wants gas cooking, and so there's a lot of competing pieces. It's not like we haven't had the conversation, but convincing clients is a challenge.
But we've heard a lot about stormwater management and things like that. We think the boss was taking time.
It's just a little bit more to bring it home. That's all it is, and because it's off to a great start, I think. So
There's a lot you can do in the building passive design as well as the mechanical systems you've already mentioned. So I think you're almost there.
I think there's a lot of interesting suggestions, and we'll take them all back, and I'm sure these things will contribute to a better project. I do hope we are able to come back to ADP as soon as possible, because it's we'll address these things very quickly, but from what I've seen, the ADP schedule is a very long time frame. So we would hope that that time will be able to bring us back in front of you as soon as possible.
You have a sales center ready in 2 weeks.
Well, it'll help if those items that we've outlined that we feel maybe we didn't get enough information on, we're front and center on the next presentation, and then hopefully we can move through it very quickly. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're not quite done yet.
I'll also
School
make
isn't here
sure,
yet.
you know, with larger projects that everyone's aware that sometimes take longer as well, because we've lost two members.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Leave in advance.
I'll just get through the last bit here. We don't have any recommendations to council or referrals. There is no correspondence. Anyone see any need for roundtable discussion that we haven't had already? No?
I just had one comment, I don't know if it's roundtable, but this is the end of my term. I've been here for 2 terms, which might be approaching 6 years, I think. I don't know. So, but, you know, I've seen the level of project coming forward in Squamish. The bar is definitely rising rapidly, and my perspective as a landscape architect is seeing meaningful open space, so it's nice to see a project that really was thinking about open space. We've got a lot of big, overweight, kind of ferry boat buildings going in this town. So I think moving forward, the importance of open space on a project site, open space for each one of those residents or whatever it is, are really important, and I think a lot of the buildings are pushing the envelope on mass and not providing a lot back. So I would encourage you guys to keep running with that theme. And obviously, Squamish has gone from an awkward teenager to be a more mature young adult now, and you're seeing that happen in all its development. And working with staff has been fabulous. You guys are really energetic and fun to work with. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thanks very much for your time. Yeah. Do we have a pen for 6 years?
No. A medal?
At least
a medal? A pen?
I think I got a cup of Christmas.
Yeah, we did. Okay.
There was a comment, sorry. There was a comment, I think the last time, of our discussions happening in front of the proponents versus happening and voting once they've left the room. Did we have a further
That's
discussion
not
on
allowed by
it?
legislation
Oh, okay.
anymore.
Just
That
even
changed
comment that
about
I think
6 or 8
Janice-
years ago.
So,
Yeah.
is that a no?
It's all public now.
Oh, no. We're public right now.
Yeah.
But I'm saying out of their view.
Oh, we dismissed them and then have
Yeah,
our...
that was her was that we just,
It was because there was some, while we were discussing which one we wanted to go for, I can't remember who it was, but there was some comments into the communication between us.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
and
I can't remember who it was, but it was quite like,
Yeah.
heated.
that he was almost part of the conversation of us.
Yeah, so I'll just,
Forward design panel.
I'll take that as a
Right.
comment that the chair should be careful that once we've finished with our discussion with them and we're having our conversation about how we're going to vote, that is kept just in our group.
But are they still in the room?
They can still be
Oh,
there
okay.
because they can always be there. It can be here right now. We
Yeah.
can't stop that, so it's okay.
But that they don't get to comment on our
They don't get to
discussion.
comment after we've stopped the questions.
Yeah,
Theoretically, after we stop the questions, they don't comment.
exactly.
Our comments are one way,
Yeah.
so, yeah. Do you have a move to terminate?
I just have one question, sorry.
Okay, one
before
more
the
question.
motion- Or a question or just a comment, but just for you guys, like it sounded from across the table that there was a lack of information and there was a miss of some pieces. So in the future, feel free to message Sarah Dicker if you're concerned with the package detail
Yeah.
or the planner who's put that report out. Even if you think the report is lacking information, we'd be happy to clarify or provide more.
I think it's probably also some direction from staff to the applicant maybe, like if there's specific questions, tell them to produce specific materials and highlight that in the presentation. Like I appreciate it's a complex project, there's a ton to go through, so it's a wealth of information to try and pick out those nuggets that where you need to answer the questions, so.
No, that's
I'll
another
throw
good
back
point.
into the guidance.
We might need 2 weeks for a multi-building project like
Well,
this,
yeah,
you know,
that's a
rather than
massive
just the one, but.
No, all very good comments, so we can take
Yeah.
this back. I think this is a big project that we don't, with waterfront landing, you see pieces of
Yeah.
it when it comes forward, and this is kind of coming together all at once.
Well, they've
So-
only had 12 years.
I didn't know it was this big until I
Well, and even the
Fine,
traffic
first
plan
place.
and the integration between across to the other side, Sunny Chivas, and the walking plan back and forth. So that makes the plan the project even bigger.
Yeah, I think that at ADP, we really try to get down to that form and character and the on-site planning, because we have to be careful. A lot of that has gone on at rezoning. I'm pretty sure it actually came to an ADP council, probably before everyone's time, maybe not yours. But, it had come forward in many different forms and has been reviewed by the community multiple times. So to kind of rehash that stuff, we can't really open that. We don't have jurisdiction to do that either, so.
Not that it gets rehashed.
Sorry, terminate, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, motion to terminate, second. All in favor? Okay.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone.